right, friends, we will go ahead and call our Education Committee meeting of the whole to order. I think we are all here. Attendance will be noted. I know that there was a sign-in sheet. If you did not sign in, and I see that not everyone did, the sign-in is actually not just for speaking, it's just for being here. So if you didn't, on your way out, if you don't mind, that would be amazing. And we will move on to 1.03, which is our committee meeting dates. Today is the 16th. This is our April session. We have one more session for the school year on May 14th. And with that, we are going to, here's how that is going to work. Just for those of you that have decided to join us for the evening, we are going to, as a board, go through the agenda as presented and as advertised. And we will, at the point after the presentation, which is 2.01, we will amend the agenda to have public comment, and then we will move on from the agenda after that. Does anyone at the table have issues with that strategy?
Would you like to amend the agenda now?
If you would like to do that, Mr. Liggett, sure, go for it.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to move to amend the agenda to insert a public comment period immediately after the middle school special area programming presentation.
Okay, and so that was a...
And then take from the table the action that was on Monday regarding that.
Thank you. And so that was the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Liggett made the motion. Second. Dr. Weston seconds. Are there any comments or questions to amend the agenda, as Mr. Liggett has mentioned?
I'm just curious if it makes sense to have the public comment period before or after.
I think that
is there a rationale that we want to do it after?
I would like the information that's been shared with the board earlier today be shared on the record publicly, and then I'm happy to entertain comment.
Okay.
But that's intentional. Yep. Comments additionally? All in favor? Aye. Against? Motion carries to amend the agenda. And the motion, the amendment will read, Mr. Liggett, say it one more time, please.
Certainly. To amend the agenda to insert a public comment period immediately after the middle school level special area programming presentation.
Well, that's the entire presentation of 2.01, item 2.01.
That's correct. So when you look at the agenda, there is the section number 2, the middle level special area programming. We would then, at the end of that presentation by administration, you would then open up for public comment, and then we may proceed to a vote. Assuming that we take it
I only have
table.
issue with that positioning because we have 2 additional items that I don't want lost in the presentation for administration, and that's gifted programming updates and ELA updates.
Which would not be a part of the motion.
It's not part of the motion, but I want to take public comment after the presentation to the committee as a whole.
But we've already voted on this and unanimously agreed to what I said.
Go ahead. That's fine.
Thank you.
No problem. Well, everybody can just sit tight and leave the room for when Dr. Moulton's ready to go on. All right. Seeing none, Dr. Russell, do you have that noted so Mrs. Reefer can capture it appropriately in the revision?
I am taking notes this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Russell. All right, moving along, 2.01, Education Committee of the Whole, agenda items and presentation. Dr. Nicholson.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the time this evening to go through what is no doubt going to be a robust agenda. As has already been mentioned, we have 4 items on the agenda this evening. The first 2 have to do with enrollments, staffing, and the middle level special area programming. And then we'll transition to gifted programming updates from Dr. Moulton, and finally some ELA updates from Ms. Zarinko. So we are kicking this off this evening with enrollments and staffing updates. And I want to take just a few minutes as we, from the top here, to kind of level set the conversation for this evening. So this all begins with our enrollment data. And this is a trend, this is a graph that I think most of us have seen a number of times. It starts in 2015 with Perkett Valley School District numbering at 5,879 students. and over the course of the years going to 2025, December 1st counts. So that is this school year, just a few months ago, with 4,614 students in the entirety of the district. So that is 1,265 students that have been that are no longer with us over the course of 10 years. So enrollment has declined by over 120 students per year on average over the last 10 years. Again, these are December 1st counts, so it's apples to apples year by year. And that enrollment trend has been substantial, as you can see the downhill trend line on the graph. To make sure we look at how things look in the future, and because this is really what administration has been going towards and looking towards for this entire spring to really see where we will be. We use the 9-year cohort survival model. This was last presented on the Finance Committee of the Whole agenda on April 7th. And under the little gray line where you can see it says projected, because 25-26 is the true numbers, 46-16, that was it was off by 2 just based on when these counts were taken. But if you look at the continued trend, so we started at 5,500 students, a little bit more than that in 2016-2017 school year. We're at just over 4,600 for this school year. And you can see as we move out over the next 10 years, those numbers continue to decline. The projections for next year are 142 students less than we currently have this year, another 103 less in 27-28 for a total of 4,300. And you can see at the bottom of this, 10 years out, in the year 2035, 2036, we're down to about 4,100 students district-wide. That's a significant decrease. That's, I believe, when it's all said and done, about 1,700 students over the course of about 20 years. So again, wanted to kind of level set the conversation because we as a district, and I'll talk more about this as we move on, we need to be fiscally responsible. We need to understand where we are as a district and where we're headed. Our projected enrollments, and again, we've seen these numbers. Our 12th grade class currently is the largest class on hand at 407. They'll be graduating in just a couple of months, and next year's senior class, the 11th graders currently, I'm sorry, this is 26-27 projections, I'm sorry. So next year's 12th grade class will be 407. They're currently in 11th grade. And that is the largest class we'll see as we move and matriculate through these numbers. So you can obviously, there's a drop year by year. Next year's 6th grade class coming into East and West is a total of 339, with a couple of tweaks here and there, a couple of small bubbles. For instance, next year's 7th grade, which we've taken into account with all of our staffing numbers. And there's a bit of a bubble in 2nd grade that it goes up from our 2nd to 3rd, or it goes up from 3rd to 2nd grade. I want to note here, we have traditionally looked at kindergarten as a static number from 1st to kindergarten. We've not taken into account a drop between 1st and kindergarten as we project for next year. We never really know where that enrollment will end up. So we have, as we look at staffing, as we look at the following year, we assume that we'll have as many kindergartners next year as we do this year. I will say we've been watching that trend over the last couple of months since kindergarten registration opened, and right now we are lagging quite a bit behind where we were this year, or this time last year. There's at least one school that would maybe have about 2 kindergarten classes if we were to start school today. And as we looked at the projected enrollment and the staffing we're projecting for next year, we're looking at 4 kindergarten sections per school based on this year's enrollment moving into next year's enrollment. So that's a consideration we're taking into account as well, that our kindergarten numbers are projecting at an even lower clip than what we had anticipated or what we've seen over the course of years. That obviously has the potential to pick up. It is only April. We have a few months until school starts, and sometimes there are families that don't start registering students until the summer comes or until they see buses rolling in the fall. But that trend, year by year, the same time last year, the numbers were quite a bit higher than they are this year.
If I could, Dr. Nicholson, I just want to add for the benefit of the board, we have open elementary positions based on the retirements. We are holding on filling those until we monitor kindergarten registrations a little bit longer because the numbers are pretty low. And again, we want to be very resourceful and maximize all of our staffing. And based on the registrations, I think we need to give it a little more time.
Yep, thank you for that. So from there, I'd like to dig in a little bit to the early retirement incentive plan and just what benefits or what benefits that reap for 19 of our participants, actually. So as everyone knows, this spring we embarked on an ERIP potential for our professional and our teaching staff, and 19 participants have elected to retire at the end of the year. That was acted on recently at a board meeting, and we congratulate all of those retirees as they become part of the class of 2026 and exit the district after their years of service. As we looked at those 19 positions, administration took a deep dive, and we've had many, many conversations with building administration as a whole, with individual levels of building administration, as well as curriculum and instruction team, and other administrators that are involved in staffing buildings and staffing what we need to serve students. Those positions, when it all came to be said and done, there are 3 ways that those positions will be allocated for. Either replaced, all right, some of those positions, and I'll dig into the numbers there, will be replaced because we can't do without that position. Some of them will be reallocated. We're going to be moving some of those positions maybe to other buildings or to other roles to match the enrollment and to match the upcoming trends in enrollment and to serve students in the ways that they need to be served in 2026, 2027, which in many ways is different than some of our programs were originally devised or originally planned for. And finally, some of those positions will be attritioned. Again, based on the trend in data, the trend in our enrollment, there are some positions that are no longer need. We can make the new class size policy, if we go back one, policy 126, that was just updated this spring, we can still maintain those class size policies even while not bringing back some of those positions. We're doing this for a specific reason. We know our enrollment has been trending down, and we are a district that's proud to say we do not want to furlough teachers. We do not want to have teachers that are currently employed that we say we no longer have a position for you because there are no children to put in front of you. Dr. Russell mentioned, and I was going to say a little bit about that later, we are holding on interviewing elementary positions because we want some more time to see where the kindergarten numbers go. We don't want to start hiring people to fill some of the elementary positions that we currently believe will be available, and then we don't need them because we have kindergarten enrollment that's lower than anticipated. All of those decisions, and I've spoken a little bit about this, they're based on enrollments, both current and those future projections I showed you. We don't want to hire folks. We don't want to bring people back. We don't want to staff roles that in a few years, as those numbers continue to trickle down, need to be furloughed. And we also need to look at our student needs. Student needs are different today. I think people would argue they've been different for a number of years. Education is different, and we need to meet students where they are, and we need to make sure that we are serving them in the ways that they need to be served in the 2020s and into the 2030s. And then finally, fiscal responsibility. Last but not least, we need to be fiscally responsible. We want to make sure we're staying with those class guidelines, those the projections that we showed on the last screen. We want to make sure that we have enough teachers and enough staff to serve our students without having too few students in a class. So just as an overview, just so everybody's kind of aware of where the ERIP participants came from, there were 8 high school teachers, 6 middle school teachers, and 5 elementary teachers that elected to retire as part of the early retirement incentive. Again, we congratulate them, and we took a long, hard look at each of these positions and what it would mean, whether they were replaced, reallocated, or potentially attritioned. In the meantime, based on all that data and all that information that I talked about earlier, we took a look at some program adjustments that we felt needed to be made. Again, not just for 26, 27, but to serve the district and to serve the students for the next 10, 15 years. Some of that includes middle school teaming. There are some attritions that are going to potentially lead to shifts in the model and some cross-grade level instruction. We have traditionally at the middle school level had 4-person teams across the board where you had a content area teacher for each of the 4 content subjects. They would teach their content. They would have 4 classes each period, and those students would be on a team and they would meet as a team. This is going to change the dynamic a bit on the middle school teaming. There will be some cross-grade level because if we continue to sit at 4 teachers per team, as you saw with the trends in enrollment, we'll get to the point where it's just not tenable to have that many teachers teaching those students. The class size will be on that very low side, and we look at fiscal responsibility, again, we don't want to be at a point where we're looking to furlough teachers in the future. We've talked a couple weeks ago about technology education and talked earlier this week about technology education. We are recommending later this evening to attrition 2 middle school tech ed teachers, 2 tech ed teacher positions during this budget cycle going into next year with some revisions to the middle school programming. These are currently positions that are not filled. They have not been filled since I arrived in the district in January. They have been posted and posted a few times, and we were not able to fill those positions. So those positions will be attributed, again, in comparison to furloughing, which would be telling a teacher that's currently being employed that we don't have a spot for them. Instructional coaches. Again, as things have changed, we've, as a curriculum and instruction team, as an administrative team, we've really looked at how we want to and how we need to serve students. And we've decided that there are 2 coaching positions that we are going to attrition, and one of those is open right now. One of those will move into back into a teaching position. So there are 2 additional attritions there. We're recommending 1 additional attrition in the English Language Development Department. And again, this is based on ELD enrollments and projections. We are at a point where our ELD numbers are very low. I believe one of our middle schools next year will have 1 student that's receiving ELD services. And we feel that the 5 ELD teachers we currently have, we can do with 4, and students will see no change in level of service for next year or the years ahead. 1 gifted position. There were a number of gifted teachers in the prior slide that I mentioned that have retired. Again, we're looking at program adjustments at the middle level, specifically with gifted. Both of the gifted teachers have elected to retire from the middle level, and we're looking at that programmatic change where 1 gifted teacher would serve our middle schools and work with that program moving forward. And then finally, 6 other attritions, which are solely based on enrollment, solely based on projections moving forward, working with the elementary principals, the middle school administration, and the high school administration on what courses have been selected, what courses have some wiggle room, and where we can continue to move forward without replacing some of those teachers who retired. So overall, when that all plays out, we are recommending 12 professional staff attritions of the 19. That ends up being 3 of the high school teachers. There will obviously be some high school teachers that are replaced, 5 middle school teachers, and there will be a little bit of movement there, 2 elementary teachers, and again, I mentioned the 2 instructional coaches. All in all, that equals out to just under 3% of our teaching staff. So this year we have 432 teachers on staff, or 432 positions in the budget. This would be a reduction of 12 for next year to 420, or a 3% reduction. Other staffing implications. So outside of that, the conversations we've had, and some of this has been spoken about here in public at a recent update by Ms. Aducci, but we are, as administration, recommending the addition of an autistic support teacher. Ms. Aducci and team presented on that. The numbers and the projections for our autistic classrooms at the elementary level are saying that we would need to add a 7th autistic support program class at either Skippack or South for next year. So we are recommending the addition of that 1 full-time autistic support teacher. That's not on the docket for tonight, but that will be moved forward as we go. And then 1 staff member is also looking and will be returning from a 5-year leave as per the collective bargaining agreement. So you can see the stipulation in the collective bargaining agreement below that at the discretion of the superintendent, currently, staff members could receive a letter of recommendation. They could be out for up to 5 years, and they are able to return to their same salary level and a comparable position. And there is a staff member that has elected to return for the 26-27 school year as per that stipulation in the collective bargaining agreement. So overall, the fiscal impact. And, I mentioned fiscal responsibility. We mentioned, kind of a level set and a reset on where things are and how our staffing looks. When you look at the left side, this is the staff savings. So the salary from the folks that will not be replaced, those positions that will be attritioned, just the salary alone is a little over $2.4 million. When you look at the $190,000, which is $10,000 per 19 participants, as part of the ERIP incentive, the PSERS, the FICA, insurance, the total savings of the district of those 12 positions that will be attritioned is $3.614 million. On the right-hand side, as I said, we're not attritioning every position. There are some folks that need, positions that need to be replaced. When we look at the positions that will be replaced, we are projecting a salary cost of just over $900,000. So when you add PSERS, you add FICA, you add insurance, that becomes a total replacement cost of those positions at 1.9. And at the bottom, what you'll see is a savings to the district budget for next year of $1,714,000. I'm sorry, $1,714,000, 238. So that's an overall assessment of where we are and the projected cost savings to the district budget for 26-27 based on all those factors I just kind of presented on with the ERIP and the attritions and the replacements and reallocations. So with that, and hand in glove with that planning and everything we've been doing there, we've been working, again, very closely with building administration on specifically middle-level special area programming. We presented on this a little bit, and my hope is tonight to give more information to the board, more information to the community on how this fell out and where we've come to as an administration on our recommendation and why, keeping everything I just mentioned in our heads as far as where we currently are and where we are headed as a district with enrollments. So on each of these levels here, you'll see current example sample schedules for students at our middle schools. 6th grade at the top, 7th grade in the middle, and 8th grade at the bottom. You'll notice at the top in 6th grade, and also, well, we'll start in 6th grade, there are on 2 lines for specials at each grade. Period 7 and 8 for 6th grade at the top, we go with vectors, and we go with trimesters for 6th grade. So vector 1 is 36 days for music in this example, 36 days for FCS, 36 for tech ed, 36 for art and digital literacy. And then trimesters, so they're each 60 days, alternating between Spanish and PE for the first trimester, French and PE for the second trimester, and computers and PE for the third. So each of those is 60 days. PE would have a total of, I'm sorry, each of those is 30 days. PE would have a total across of 90 days. 45 of those, I'm sorry, 22.5, and I'll get to this, are health and phys ed, I'm sorry, health. This is confusing to me still. 7th grade, again, another example, 2 lines, period 3, period 4. Now we have marking periods and we have vectors. The first one is the language line, which has French. So this student specifically has selected French. So in 6th grade, it's exploratory. Some Spanish, some French, some computer. In 7th grade, it becomes a year-long French, a year-long Spanish, or a year-long tech and innovation course. That alternates with health and PE. And then again, we have 36-day vectors on the second line there with FCS, music, 2 separate tech ed options, and art. And finally, in 8th grade, we go to semesters, so it's a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit easier for students to follow. On the first line, period 1, you have Spanish and Tech Ed 8B as an example there, alternating days. Semester 2, on that same period, Spanish and Art. FCS and PE, period 2, semester 1, and period 2, semester 2, Tech Ed 8A and PE. So again, there's quite a bit of change over here. There's quite a bit of differences between year to year. And there are vectors that are 36 days. There are courses that are 45 days. There are some that are 30, some that are 60, some that are 90. Our model or our proposed programming really looks to streamline this, really looks to meet students where their needs are in 2026, 2027, and moving forward. We feel that specials at the middle school should be exploratory. They should be looking to, students should be looking to see what they are interested in, see what where their passions lie, see where their skills may lie, and really look to, by the end of 8th grade, have a good example of all of the coursework that they can make informed decisions when they're selecting courses going into 9th grade. We want to provide for a balanced schedule that really shows equity in the courses that are offered in our middle school programming. What you'll see here is across the top, the art, the FCS, tech ed, and music for the first 2 years, 6th and 7th grade. 6th is on the left, 7th in the middle, and 8th on the right. They all are 45 days for a marking period. So complete equity there with those courses over the first 2 years. In 8th grade, they become every other day for a semester. They are still 45 days. Music moves to an ensemble structure where 8th graders replace some of their electives. They elect to take a music course, so they get some choice where they get to take band, orchestra, or chorus. And that replaces some of their other special areas there. And what we are looking to do, and we'll talk more about this, is infuse digital literacy, which is also a course which we'll see on the bottom line for 6th grade later, but digital literacy into 8th grade as well. We know that is something that we need to do a better job of, getting to students digital wellness, how to use digital tools, how to be respectful of digital tools, and really how to use them appropriately in today's day and age, something that we feel is a bit lacking in our current structure. On the bottom, you'll see another example of where these courses have gone. So in 6th grade, Spanish, French, digital literacy, and computer. Again, these are each 22.5 days, alternating with PE and health. Again, exploratory. Do I like Spanish? I have it for a few days. I get some exposure to that. I get exposure to French. I get exposure to digital literacy and learn some tools I need in 6th grade as I move into middle school. And I get exposure to computer. When I move into 7th or 8th, again, this becomes year-long. You have Spanish, or you have French, or you can select tech and innovation for 7th and 8th grade, again, alternating with PE and health. We've also, and I'll just mention this briefly because it'll play into some of the numbers later, we've changed the model for PE and health. I think we've mentioned this prior to this. PE and health over the course of the last number of years has been every other day, and 1 marking period of PE is replaced by 1 marking period of health classes. What we're looking to do is change this, so in a 6-day cycle, all year long, students would have 1 day of health and 2 days of PE. We realize that spreads the PE classes out over the course of the year, which we feel is more beneficial, and it's the way we model our elementary schools. And it also keeps students moving in PE throughout the entirety of the year. So you can imagine with the winter we had, if a student was in health, let's say 3rd marking period, or let's say even 2nd marking period from November till late winter, they spent a lot of time indoors and they had no PE in their schedule. So they would have had health and potentially no movement, no structured movement, unless they were an athlete or in some sort of activity outside of school. We're trying to change that to provide student activity throughout the year. So I know there was conversation. We've fielded a number of questions about what this does to the number of courses or the number of periods that are potentially in student schedules throughout the entirety of their middle school career. So these next 2 slides, I've tried to outline just what it would look like for a student if they decided to take every tech-related course that we offer. So every tech-related course that we currently have, including the digital literacy, students would, based on what they have in the current structure, Tech Ed 6, Digital Lit 6, Computer, and then the 7A, 7B, Tech and Innovation 8A, 8B, and Tech and Innovation 8, they would have 444 class periods of a tech-related course during their middle school career. And again, they would not have to choose Tech and Innovation for either of those years, so those 2 90-period classes could fall off if they were taking a different language. On the right-hand side, you'll see the proposed. So we've changed the Tech Ed 6 from 36 days to 45 in our proposal. The Digital Lit 6 does go from 36 to 22.5. Computer goes from 30 to 22.5. There's 1 Tech Ed 7, 1 Tech Ed 8. The Tech and Innovation does not change. And again, we're proposing a Digital Literacy 8 at 45 class periods in 8th grade, which would be a total of 405 class periods across the 3 years. So that is a deduction of 39 class periods in a tech-related course over the course of 3 years. So roughly 13 periods per year on average. Again, if a student took every tech-related course that we offer. That does not always happen. There are music students in 8th grade that elect to not take Tech Ed 8A or Tech Ed 8B, and there are students that elect to take French or Spanish and do not take Tech and Innovation in either 7th or 8th grade. For non-tech related coursework, we're going to take another look at this. So this is a little wonky. It's in 2 different charts here, but current is on the left, Proposed is on the right. The grand totals are bottom right. But you'll see, when I talked a little bit earlier about equity across the courses, FCS 6 in our proposal moves from 36 days to 45. Music 6 from 36 to 45. Art 6 from 36 to 45. We've talked a lot about our comprehensive plan. We've talked a lot about STEM, but one of our goals as well as a district is to really build the arts and to really give students the ability to find what it is they're passionate about and find what it is they want to do in their life. And we feel like this brings more equity to the non-tech related courses as well. As I mentioned, Health 6, PE 6, they change from the numbers that are listed in current to the proposed because of that change in structure of health and PE, where it will be ongoing throughout the year. So there is more health infused in each and every year of a middle school career. Let's get to the bottom line. If a student took none of the elective tech ed courses or tech related courses, they elected to take music in 8th grade and not take tech ed 8, they elected not to take tech and innovation, their total number of non-tech related coursework would go up by the same 39 that the tech ed or tech related courses went down by. So again, this is spread across FCS, music, art, health, PE, and language. So I want to dig in just a little bit to Steels and talk a little bit about the standards and the things that really played into the decision for tech ed and what this looks like on this side. So Steels, as you know, science, technology, engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability standards is something that has been infused into our district and every other district in Pennsylvania over the last number of years. We've been working very hard to update curricula and roll out Steels-related instruction in all of our courses. Life science, physical science, earth and space science, environmental literacy, and then finally 3.5 technology and engineering, which is what we're primarily talking about this evening. But the Steele standards are infused in all 5 of those areas. It's not simply in one specific area. So the current 7th and 8th grade programming for Tech Ed. We have 4 courses, Tech Ed 7A, 7B, Electricity and Electronics, and Graphic Design. Tech Ed 8A is Engineering Design Process, and 8B is Technology and Society. And next to each of the topics that's there, you can see the rough number of days that are spent on each of those different units or each of those different strands of that course. So as one example, 7A, Electricity and Electronics, we spend roughly 5 days on electricity, roughly 7 days on electronics, and roughly 45 days soldering, manufacturing, and safety. So again, just an example. I'm sorry?
24, right?
Yes. What did I say?
45, it's okay.
Did I say 45? Okay. Sorry, that was stuck in my head. There are too many numbers in this. I'm not always a numbers guy. So that's an example, and you can look through each of these and see what those units look like. It says at the bottom, and just so you're understanding, Tech Ed 6, Computer 6 would still remain exploratory. Tech Ed 6 gains 9 days, computers would lose 7.5. So again, just going back to that previous, conversation. We took a look at some standards. We took a look at the Steele standards and really what that encompasses. And I'm not going to read this entire slide to you, but there is definitely redundancy and there is overlap with some of our current curricula across all of the courses. So 22 plus standards appear in multiple units or courses. There are several standards that span all 3 grade levels. And we use both courses within the same grade. Sometimes there are multiple standards hit. On the right, you'll see just kind of a crosswalk of some of the standards and where they're covered. So as the top example I'll use only, and then I'll let you read, that specific standard is used in 4 different units in 2 grades. The heavy concentration is in 7th, but that's not the only place it's hit. So, again, looking to make sure that we are hitting all of the Steele standards, making sure that we are giving students what they need to be able to know and do, but also bringing some equity to instruction and understanding that there is some room for some of the content to be moved around and streamlined as a way to increase rigor. As we look at our curricula, K to 12, there are some overlap in some of the other areas. So when we look at electricity and electronics, some of that, electrons, for instance, they're in 8th grade physical science. So it's not only in electricity and electronics, but it's in physical science. Fourth grade does cover electric currents. Not to say that there's not room to touch on that in some areas in tech ed, but again, the amount of time that we spend on some of these, we believe can be streamlined to enhance the rigor district-wide in all of our curricula, to ensure that students are getting everything they need, and that they're getting what is really required of them from a standard standpoint. As we will hear, I'm sure, and we know that technology is a tested subject. So we want to make sure we're hitting all these and that we're infusing this not just in tech ed, but across the curriculum. I'll just touch base on the kind of the last thing. Science and engineering practices really, as we look at this and as I transition to the next slide, it's really something that we feel strongly should be embedded and not just taught in isolation. So instead of teaching the engineering process, we really want to make sure that we're using the engineering process as a way of teaching it. So this is a great example that Dr. Henderhan mentioned the other day, and I've seen it before, but it had been a while, the difference between the two ice cream examples. So the Neapolitan ice cream, and I'm not going to pass judgment, I love ice cream. Neapolitan's not my favorite, but that has nothing to do with this example. You can very clearly see there that the three are separated. Right? They're in isolation. You can choose one or two or three, but they're in isolation versus the Ben & Jerry's, and I have no brand enthusiasm here either, but the example on the right, everything's mixed up and it's intermixed and entangled in itself and integrated into itself. That's really how we see the STEEL standards being taught. That's really how we see science, technology, and engineering being infused into all of our classrooms across all of our curricula. We know that science and engineering, based on the STEEL standards, based on the research, should really be engaged in inquiry cycle or inquiry-based learning. It should really start, and you can see on the bottom right there, with a phenomenon. It shouldn't necessarily start with teaching, for instance, the engineering and design process. Here is the process. Now we're going to put the process into application. We're moving towards an example in Pennsylvania as a whole with the STEEL standards, is moving towards a phenomena-based teaching example. We start with a phenomenon. We ask questions from that, and we start going around the inquiry cycle. We ask questions. We look for explanations. We design investigations and we carry them out, and then we engage in argument and go back to questions and go back to explain, and we go through that cycle in ways to learn the content and to learn the standards, not necessarily direct instruction on this is the design process, and then this is a project we're going to do with it. So that's ways we believe we can streamline and create a more rigorous learning example for our students. So what could these courses look like? We know there's some changes to grade 6. We are proposing and we are recommending taking 7A and 7B and making one tech ed course there. We're proposing taking 8A and 8B and making one course there. And the next 3 slides outline top of thinking, initial thinking examples of what these courses could be. As we've spoken about in public, we have not done a deep dive into this. We have not started spending time with our teachers to really design these courses, to write the curriculum, to really dive into what these courses will look like. So this is an example from administration looking at everything that I'm putting together here as to what these courses could look like. Knowing where STEEL standards are infused in other courses and other curricula across the district, knowing where we would like to see things head, and again, for all the reasons we talked about, we'd like to see some change here. So foundations of technology in 6th grade, really emphasis placed on understanding how technologies are designed, how they function, and students engaging in hands-on experiences. That's a no-brainer. This is technology education. We want hands-on experiences built on the foundational skills, solving, safety, and technical literacy. So starting with that in 6th grade. In 7th grade, it becomes more application. Again, initial thinking. This is going to take a lot greater shape should this recommendation be approved of. That's when the work starts with the curriculum department, with our teachers, with everything that needs to happen between now and August to make this happen. Students in applied technology, again, hands-on projects, learn how technological systems function, how components interact, and emphasis on troubleshooting, measurement, and system performance. So again, taking what was learned in grade 6, applying it in grade 7 at a more deeper level. And then finally, engineering and society in 8th grade, solutions to real-world problems. We're looking at modeling, prototyping, testing, refining designs. And again, this is a hands-on course, a hands-on example where we're looking at emerging technologies, ethical, environmental, and societal implications. So again, a course that builds on itself, builds on prior experiences, 45 days in 6th, 45 days in 7th, 45 days in 8th. Again, room for great improvement upon what's here. This will be a much stronger outline and much stronger curricula when everyone's had the time and put the energy into developing it fully. So what about digital literacy? I mentioned that earlier. Currently, digital literacy is in grades K through 5 as part of the curriculum that is taught in explorations. That curricula is one of the special areas that's across all 6 of those grade levels. And then we have a grade 6 course. It's been quite some time since that grade 6 course has been updated. And we know, regardless of the recommendation and whether we move forward with our plan here, we know that grade 6 course needs to be updated. So again, these are top level, high level, first blush thoughts at what this could look like. And I'll move through this very quickly. This is very wordy, but there's a great pictogram on the next slide that Dr. Parr put together that really encompasses what this is. And for those of you, when you look at this, and I won't take the time this evening, but well, I'll take the time for one real quick. There is a very brief in the slideshow, a link to a draft of both Digital Literacy 6 and Digital Literacy 8 that give a high-level overview of what this course could look like, what some of the standards could be, and what we would be looking to do in that course. Again, I won't go deeply into that because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. That slide had 1,000 words. This has more of a picture. So really, when you look at the theme of the 2 courses, grade 6 would be building independence and integrity, really looking into information literacy, digital footprint and responsibility, and digital resilience. Moving into 8th grade, a 45-day course on leadership, ethics, and intentionality, really looking at research literacy, digital ethics, digital leadership for 8th graders as they become the big fish in the small pond at the middle school and look to move on to the high school the following year. So really infusing digital wellness, the understanding of how and why and when students should be using technology, how that looks in today's day and age. Again, something we feel very passionate about that has not been looked at for quite some time. There are members of our community, a number of parents have been engaging with our wellness committee and have throughout this year really been looking for more digital wellness. And we feel this is a great way to not only look at the K-5 explorations curricula and infuse more digital wellness there, but into both 6th and 8th grade to make sure students have what they need to be successful as digital natives moving into the high school. So, the why of this middle school schedule update proposal. The why behind this is really keeping students at the center. What is it that we want students to be able to experience in middle school? And that's exploring their passion, exploring maybe things they don't even know exist, whether that be FCS, whether that be tech ed, whether that be music, art. We want them to experience a wide variety of coursework in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Real choice starts in 9th grade as they move from this year's 8th graders to next year's 9th graders. They have a wide variety of courses to select, but we want to make sure that they have a good idea of what's out there and what's available as they move through the middle school. So we really looked at exploratory coursework, bringing equity to all of those levels, bringing equity to all of those different departments in what this proposal could look like. Engaging instruction. I mentioned hands-on a number of times. We need to make sure that all of this coursework is hands-on, that it is engaging, that we are really keeping students moving, that we're keeping them busy with rigorous coursework throughout all subject areas. Obviously, at the bottom of this, we talked about staffing resources. We need to make sure that we are right-sizing this school district as we move forward. This is a time that the early retirement we really see as a time to reset where we are and make sure we're serving the students of this district, not just for next year, but for years to come. And we've seen where those trends are heading. And that plays into that fiscal responsibility, right? We want to make sure that we're not bringing teachers on, that we're not bringing staff on into this district as numbers continue to decrease, as enrollment continues to go down, that we're not hiring teachers, that we're not bringing things in, that in a couple years we're back at the table saying we're facing the real hard challenge that we're going to need to furlough some teachers. You know, there are 19 folks retiring this year. My understanding, and I'm fairly new to the district, but my understanding is that's maybe 4 years worth of typical retirements. So we're not going to have this opportunity potentially for a couple of years. And that was the real reason between the ERIP or behind the ERIP was to have a level set, to reset where we are and make sure we're serving students and being fiscally responsible with district resources moving forward. So with that, the very last slide, I'll just go back to the recommendation of administration is to request approval of the revised middle school special area schedule as I presented this evening. And with that, I will yield the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholson. I want to open up the table for questions to administration. I know Mr. Handerhan is here as well, so he can speak to some of it. Obviously, Dr. Nicholson and Dr. Russell, you both are available to answer questions. I just want to also point out and I know that it was stressed several times in a very explicit way in this particular presentation because we were finally talking about enrollment and staffing, and this is really the first look at what the outcome of the ERIP was to the community. At no point were furloughs discussed or even really breathed air into the room for presentation to this board or behind the scenes with administration. Furloughs were not on the table in any fashion, and I want to be very, very clear about that, okay? Very clear. So that was frank and that was candid, and I think it was necessary because I think that there is a fiscal reality, and I think that we all, as a school district here in Perkiomen Valley, are extraordinarily lucky. We're in a wonderful, thank you to to Mr. Weaver and his team, to be in a very solid financial position. But we live within a larger world, and we all have to deal with the realities of that world, and the problems that other folks have and other districts have are not the problems that Perkiomen Valley has. So I just want to level set and very clearly and explicitly state that furloughs were never part of the conversation and would not be entertained by this board. That's all. Yeah, but that was frank, and that was candid, and that was necessary, because at the end of the day, you have to have money to run a school district, and we need to be able to do that in a way that doesn't harm the objective of the school district, which is educating students. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
With that, I will open the table for questions from board members to administration. Who wants to go first? Oh, come on, there were so many questions emailed back and forth
I'll
since
go first.
Monday. Go ahead, Mrs.
So,
Lofton.
I would say, first, just to follow up on to what you said, Mrs. White, I hope that we never are in a position where we do have to entertain furloughs. So that's also, I think, something that we need to be thinking about. Excuse me. So my one question remaining is for the 8th grade students who are participating in music ensembles. There was a question about whether or not it would be required, since those students are allowed to elect which special they take. Would the digital literacy coursework be a requirement to those students?
Yeah, great question. And I will start just to reiterate what both of you just said. My very first year as an administrator, I was an assistant principal, and the district I worked in at that time went through a furlough process, and those were the hardest couple days of my life. Talking to teachers about the fact that they no longer had jobs. So I would never be in favor of that. It's not a pleasant spot to be in. And I'm exceedingly happy that I'm in this district and that the board stance is similar to mine, that we never want to be in that position. To answer your question, Ms. Lofton, yes, the music ensemble students, if they are taking one music ensemble or two, they do elect to take those music electives, and in so doing, they decide that they're not taking some of those courses. We're currently leaning away from requiring digital literacy because if we required digital literacy, we would, in essence, be telling some of our music students that they couldn't participate in their music ensembles. If they were part of 2 or 3 ensembles, they could no longer do so. What we we've looked at and some of the conversation we've had as a curriculum and instruction team and as an administration is really, are there other ways that we can infuse digital literacy for those students that take band ensembles? Could we use I&E period for 8th grade? Could we use advisory period to pull those students from time to time to hit the highlights of that digital literacy 8? And really the digital wellness and some of the, once the curriculum is developed, we'll know really what that could look like. But that's really what we're looking at now is we're leaning currently, the current prevailing thinking is that it would not be required, but that it would be somehow replaced in a student schedule should they elect to take the band ensembles.
So they would still have an opportunity to access the content perhaps outside of a graded course?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, did you have a
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I'll go. I'm trying to understand it, and I appreciate the work and the slides that you put in. The ice cream one, I don't know if I love that one, because if you take a bite of everything all together, I don't know if you're really understanding what you're eating. But if you're taking a bite of each individual, you understand what makes strawberry, what makes chocolate, what makes vanilla, right? To wrap that. But if I'm looking at this correctly, we're saying that 4th grade science, we teach electric currents. Are we saying that's sufficient? And is that taught again? Or we think a 4th grader is supposed to remember what he was taught, and we're not going to see that again in 7th and 8th grade because it was touched in 4th grade science, or 8th grade physical science touches electrons. So we can take that out of tech ed, but we're not, although it might be touched in the class, it's not putting the puzzle together like it would be in tech ed, right? And so it's cool, we touch it here and we move on, but then in tech ed, in my next period when I'm in my class, maybe I'm not understanding the connection as a student, right? So it's kind of my fear with this. It's when it's written down, it looks great, but in practice, in reality, I don't know how much, and I could be wrong. It's just me questioning, right?
Sure.
So that was like my question. Essentially, it's 4th grade,
Yeah, so I can give a brief answer on that, but Dr. Handerhan can dive in there too. I mean, I've explained it well. I don't believe, that 4th grade science covers everything about electric currents that a student needs until they graduate from high school. There's certainly some extension there. The idea of this slide was really just to understand that there is some overlap for some of these things, and we've just started to dig into really where some of this overlap is. So we need to really take a look K through 8, K through 12, at where these steel standards lie and where they're taught, and ensuring that we are doing the proper extensions at the proper time to make sure students have what they need at that developmental level. So Dr. Handerhan, if you can.
Yeah,
clean
good
that up.
question. Good question. What I was thinking about when you were asking that was, like, these standards are new. Like, currently, our 4th grade teachers, as all our K-5 teachers, participated in curricular writing with steels, incorporating the new standards into their curriculum documents. And so I guess the point with that is, like, currently there's not great communication on the curriculum documents to say this is what we teach about electrical currents in 4th grade. So what sometimes happens then is you end up reteaching the same thing in like a later grade. And so these new documents with the new steel standards articulate very well like what a 4th grade student should learn. And it's very explicit on what they have to know about electric circuits. And I think that would be, it'd be very informative to the tech ed teachers when we plan our curriculum going forward as well. To that point too, in the 4th grade standard that talks about that, it also has a tech ed piece to it. So within the standards, when we had like that infographic of like the ice cream, like the old way of teaching science and engineering was like teaching things maybe in isolation. The new standards really do a good job of kind of combining things together. And like a main point is science and engineering are together. They're cohesive. They should be taught together. And one of the strands is these science and engineering practices. So it outlines what students are doing K to 12 in science and also in tech ed classes. And it's very aligned with the engineering and design process. It's really the same thing with a different word to it. right? So they're doing these things already. And then this other piece, the content of what students need to know, that's another component to STEELS. And so within, for instance, like this 4th grade standard right here, which is it's a physical science standard, but it also outlines on here too, there's a tech ed content piece that needs to be taught as well. So it just goes to show like how these are integrated too. And like that slide that was up earlier goes to show that like there is leveraging some of the content right now that's being taught in some of those courses in other grade levels.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers my question. It definitely answers my question for that. It's just a matter of, again, I don't know how, in practice with everything, not losing some of the tech ed things, because obviously we're talking about covering it here and covering it there, right? And linking it together. It's just, I have other questions. I'm kind of going to let these other board members get their questions in, and maybe I'll jump back in here when I kind of gather them a little bit more.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I do know it really is a lot to, as an overview, even the implementation of the STEEL standards that were mandated. They weren't like we solicited that choice. As a school district in Pennsylvania, that was just what was mandated. But I want to acknowledge the fact that although conceptually and very often it's very different for us because we all went to school at a different time to have a full awareness of application, I think that as a board, I've always really relied on and respected curriculum. They are literally doing this all day, every day, to figure out the best way to deliver instruction
Yeah.
in partnership with teachers.
And I agree. And one of the things that really holds me back is I'm hearing from administration of the proposed changes. I would have loved to hear from support from music educators, art educators, some really strong backing of this. I feel like as a community, we've heard a lot of, and essentially from some of the educators for the tech ed, it just seems like maybe they're not involved, not that they're not involved, but they're not on board, right? So, me personally, I want to defer to the professionals in the situation, and if they're not really fully sold on board, I have a hard time, with my experience saying, yeah, maybe it's a good idea, or maybe I have some pause.
That trusting that the change would be beneficial in the
Yeah.
long run.
So, I mean, it keeps running in my mind, right?
Sure.
If we had the support, and maybe we do, and maybe we'll hear comments tonight that we have the support from the professionals and the educators and the community, and we've heard a lot from the community negatively wise, right? Maybe not always we hear all the positives of it.
Welcome to the board, Mr. Williams.
Yeah,
You
yeah, in my
actually
first couple
mostly only
months,
hear from the
yeah.
community when it's something they're upset about.
Sure. But it doesn't mean that there's not truth in it, right?
Well,
So
I
we
think that
can't-
everybody's feelings are 100% valid
Yeah.
because they're speaking from their own experience. But, I mean, if we're looking for a comparable thing to be upset about, there was a shift away from Spanish at the elementary level, which I didn't support. I wanted 7 specials, but we have a 6-day cycle. And yet, ultimately, there was a recommendation presented to the board from administration, and that's sort of, like, there are administrators in charge of driving the needs of the district.
Sure.
And so feelings and emotions and the what-ifs, is anything ever perfect, is also a great question.
No, and that's why we're having these
But revisiting,
conversations,
100%, no question that there should not be transparent and candid conversation. But I'm just saying that in a comparable scenario, time and time again over, my tenure, and I defer to other board members that have either returned or have been sitting just as long as myself, that it's a hard conversation to have because change is very uncomfortable. But then there's this element of faith and practice.
Yep.
So that's all I have to offer
Yeah, no, I
personally, not
understand.
even regarding this, but just
Yeah.
in anything that would happen to come up.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents there. But you're right.
Yeah,
We
and obviously if you
absolutely did hear advocacy and feedback as to why this change would be negative. I think I stated my position pretty clearly, and I've had some conversations with other board members throughout the last 2 weeks, that to me, a change doesn't have to be a heavy lift. It can be an opportunity to actually make it better than it ever was. And so that's the tact that I tend to like to take, because I have tremendous faith in our educators.
Yep, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, it sounded, Mr. Williams, like you're questioning whether the art teachers, the music teachers are on board with the change. Was that your question?
Well, it just would have been, nice to hear their support of this, right? We've heard a lot of different things, and I'm not saying that I needed everybody to kind of come here and present. It just seems as if, while we're giving the kids more choices, and that's our goal here, is to give them more choices and more equity in the courses they're learning. The fear in the community is that we are going to be losing. Well, yeah, we have to take from something to give equity to, and if we're performing well in the arts and the music classes and things like that, and we're performing really well in tech ed, as a part of me is why change what's not broken. Now, I understand what we were showed today, and I appreciate these slides, but these are just questions that I have, and I think when it comes down to vote, I don't know if I don't know where I stand right now. So
Sure.
Go ahead, Dr. Russell.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Williams' question about, are the other special area teachers comfortable with this proposal? And according to principals, when special area teachers get more time with their students, they're comfortable with a change. They're happy about that. They're not happy when staff reductions occur. These aren't reductions, they're actually attritions. But when they get more time, that's something they appreciate.
If I could kind of jump in here, I do really appreciate the additional context and detail we're provided with this evening. I understand a lot of the additional rationale for proposing these changes and what they're based on. I agree. I have to agree with Mr. Williams. Looking at this slide with the streamlining and enhancing rigor, I wasn't really sure what the point was you were trying to make here, because it did kind of sound like, well, you get electricity in 4th grade and then you get it again in 8th grade. Well, the electricity you learn about in 4th grade is a lot different from what you learned in 8th grade, and then you're going to get it in AP Physics when you're a senior, and that's going to be different still. Same with the you give the example of machines. You're going to learn about that in your other science classes, in your physics classes. These things all build on each other, and it's important to have that introduction early on so you can build on it later on. What I think is important is to make sure that throughout the grade levels, throughout the different levels, that everybody understands what's been presented before, so that you have the appropriate continuity, and you're not being taught something very differently in middle school than you are in elementary school. I've seen that with my own kids in some of the things that they went through here. When my son was in elementary school, they taught math in a certain way, and then they get to middle school and they presented a completely different aspect of math. I hope that's not still the same way. I hope there's a lot more continuity there, because we really struggled with that for a long time. The main thing that I'm looking at here, and that has kind of bothered me throughout, is the amount of time that's going to be changing. And I appreciate very much the way you talk about teaching science and teaching engineering, starting with phenomena and working from there, because it's one of the problems that we have had for a long time with science education, is that so much of the hands-on stuff is just illustrative of what you've done in class. You learn a principle in chemistry class, and then maybe 3 weeks later, you'll have a lab that's supposed to illustrate that principle, and, sometimes the lab doesn't work out very well. By then, you've moved on to something else in class, and you've kind of forgotten what it is you're supposed to be illustrating here, and it gets a little messy. The whole activity of science, because science is an activity, science is a verb when you get down to it, and the whole idea of it is to use the process to figure out what's going on with phenomena. The issue that kind of arises there, or the wrinkle there, is that's a very, very hands-on activity. And if we're cutting back on the time in the classes, then you have that much less time to do the hands-on aspect that is so important to a phenomenological-based approach to science education. And that's the hesitation I have at this point, because I just don't know at this point how that's going to work. The comments we had from our tech ed teachers on Monday night, I'm not sure that they're completely happy. And if that's a misstatement, then I hope they'll correct me during comments tonight, because I think this is very important that they're on board and they have some thoughts as to how this is going to be managed, because, as I said in emails today, you're almost cutting in half the time that 7th and 8th graders spend in tech ed, going from, I don't remember the numbers, they're in the slides, but you're cutting back pretty significantly. You need to make sure that the hands-on time is there if you're going to take this phenomenological approach to science education. I appreciate having the summaries now for the 7th and 8th grade tech ed and for the digital literacy. This is something that we've been looking for here, and I hope that these are going to be translated into course designs and curricula that we can look at very, very soon, because I want to make sure that the hands-on aspect is preserved as fully as can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your comments, Dr. Wesson, Dr. Hanna, and we'll go to you in a second. Absolutely. Again, these are high-level initial thinking. I agree with you. Should the recommendation carry, should we move forward with this proposal, the teachers will be on the ground level and the real work begins in getting you the documents that you just actually, you referenced. So we want to work hard on that. We want to get that, in front of you as soon as we can, given that opportunity.
And I can just say, you're correct, this does take time, the phenomena-based education. Our science teachers are noting that. The benefit is, though, again, that a lot of these are integrated, so that they're not just isolated skills being taught in 7th grade science class or 7th grade tech ed class. They're integrated. And so many of the skills that are currently in the programming for tech ed, the processes, for example, are also taught in 7th grade. So I guess the point with the one slide is some of these skills do not need to be taught in isolation. They're actually supposed to be taught. They're embedded. They're baked into the standards. So these science and engineering practices are incorporated in all of the standards for science and tech ed. They're the same at all K-12.
I apologize. I actually was going to ask this on Monday, and then I deferred, and then I forgot to follow up. But what are the uptake rates currently in the 2 middle schools for the various specials? It was kind of ambiguous. I appreciate the information that the 2 middle school administrators provided Monday night, but it was somewhat ambiguous, both the allocation of students to those courses across the grade levels, but then also in conjunction with ensemble, because ensemble kind of muddies it all. And not that the decision that we make tonight should be based entirely on a quantitative measure, but it helps inform us as to the relative impact as perceived, right? So, if the uptake rates, because I don't know, if Tech Ed A and B right now are the lowest participated classes, that is a different way to look at this than they're the highest participated classes. And also there's the notion of, classes run out, they're electives. So if everybody's taking tech ed and there's children that are going into art or music that otherwise want to go in tech ed because they couldn't get into it, that's a different perspective than actually tech ed is a desert and there's only a handful. Like, I'm not sure about what the participation rates are, and maybe they vary by the schools too. Yeah. That could be a driver too. And I apologize, Dr. Russell, I meant to, when you asked for additional input, I had thought of that Monday night and subsequently forgot to re-ask about it. But that ultimately goes back to administration, I guess, to answer from what are the numbers of students taking these courses? Because presumably we can project the ramifications to those numbers of students trying to take the similar coursework in the new curriculum.
So really, I think if we look at the courses, what you're asking how many students take tech and innovation in 7th or 8th grade versus Spanish or French, because those are really the choice there, and how many students are not taking Tech Ed 8A or Tech Ed 8B that are in ensembles. I believe that those are really the choices that where every other student takes every other course. So currently, every student takes Tech Ed 7A and Tech Ed 7B, as well as FCS and art. There's no real choice in 7th grade other than that language line, so Tech and Innovation, Spanish or French. I don't know, I know we have all 4 of our middle school administrators here. I don't know if they have those numbers in front of them. I see Ms. Harris at least saying yes, and maybe we can come back to it, or if you can run those numbers.
The real ambiguity comes in the nuance
the
of
ensemble.
election based on those edge cases of ensemble participation, et cetera. Otherwise, there's participation equity across all of those courses, despite them being referred to as elective.
Correct.
Right, and our kids getting turned away, is that what you're, yes, I understand. I know that, I don't know if anecdotally you want to just wait, you want to speak to that, Dr. Russell or Dr. Nicholson? I know that they're getting their numbers together.
I think Ms. Harris shared those percentages Monday night. They're reviewing some of their data, but I think they had indicated to us of the students who have an opportunity to choose in 8th grade, and those are our students who elect to participate in music. They shared some data on the percentage of students that elect art, those that elect FCS, and those that elect technology education. So I don't know if you have those data again. Okay, so Mr. DeAndrea will approach the podium to speak into the mic and help us to review those.
Hi, everyone. Okay, where would you like to start, 7th or 8th grade? Okay, we'll start at 7th grade, world language. French is 50, Spanish is 60, and tech and innovation is 55. In 8th grade, in art, 37 music students, 55 music students in FCS, 23 music students in Tech Ed 8A, and 15 music students in Tech Ed 8B. And those 4 electives all have 133 students. Anyone not taking the music elective, they all take all 4.
You were too quick.
Sorry. I can do 7th grade too. All right.
That's all right. Yeah, I had these percentages the other day, but I think what, let's see. All right, so what I've just confirmed with Dr. Garrett was at West, at last year, there were 35 students that, 8th grade students that were taking the music courses first period, and only 1 ended up going into the tech ed, choosing the tech ed component of things out of those 35. The other, again, all others don't choose, they go into those courses. And then when it came to choosing tech and innovations, this is the one I'm trying to look up quickly, but we currently have, do you have those numbers? Yeah, we currently have 29 students taking tech and innovations, choosing to take tech and innovations as 7th graders. And that is probably in the low 20% range of all
And
of
then
total
just for
students.
context, Tech and Innovations is in place of Spanish or
Correct.
French.
Those
Okay,
are
there's
the
a lot of
students
words
choosing
flying
Tech and
around, so I
Innovations
just
as
want to
a
make sure
language.
we clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would it be helpful to share also the Spanish and French, though, Mr. Creedon? Do you have those? Just so that we have the full picture, as Mr. DeAndre presented. Do you happen to have those numbers?
And for East, I think I forgot to say that the 8th grade world language numbers, 76 in French, 69 in Spanish, and 40 in Tech and Innovations.
All right, so going down the list here, but that was 29 in Tech and Innovations. In French, oh gosh, we're challenging my math here, but we're looking at 63. Oh, I'm sorry, we're looking at French 7. So, and going back to French 7, that would be 28, 30, 44 in French 7, and in Spanish 7, it is much larger. So it was a significant amount of students taking much Spanish compared to French, then Tech and Innovations, but probably numbers in the 34, 69. So, all right, 69, 40s, and then the 29 in Tech and Innovations.
So I think this kind of speaks to one of my concerns about equity. It seems like we offer students who are interested in the arts, specifically music, the opportunity to take that every single day. And then it feels like there's this other bucket of students who are more interested in like engineering or the trades. And they currently, you know, their access to their preferred thing will be reduced to a certain degree by like X number of days. So, you know what I mean? Like there's just, I kind of see them as like two buckets of students with different interests, and one feels like they have a lot more opportunity to access their interests than the other group does.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so music, if they were taking music every day, they would be in two different ensembles. But you are correct. They could choose in 8th grade to be in music every day and not take a special on that top right line.
Can someone take tech ed every day then, if they opt to? Between, it looks like there's 2 offerings, semester every other day, and then year-long every other day.
So in 8th grade, if a student does not elect a music ensemble, they would have a tech-related course either every day for a semester or every other day all year long, because there are 2 selections there. So there's tech ed and digital literacy in the recommended proposal. So it would be 45 days of tech ed, 45 days of digital literacy for an 8th grader. And they could, at the same time in 8th grade, elect Tech and Innovations, which is another 90 days. So they could have, in all essence, 180 days worth of tech-related courses in 8th grade.
Okay, and what about Spanish?
If they chose Spanish, they would be choosing out of Tech and Innovation, and Spanish would be 90 days long in 8th grade and 7th grade.
So it's the same?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the bottom line there for 7th grade in green and 8th grade in blue are both year-long, every other day. So Spanish or French or Tech and Innovation, and they alternate days with PE and health.
And what about art? So art, it looks like, is just offered.
Art is
Once.
slated as 45 days per year, all 3 years.
Just 45 days?
Correct.
So if you like art, if art's your choice, you only have 45 days a year that you take art.
Correct.
But you can take tech and innovation every day.
You could.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm sorry. You could take it every
other
day all year.
Okay,
90 days.
90 days. Thank you.
Go
ahead, Mr. Williams.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, so a quick look at the numbers. It just seems like the biggest is tech ed's going to lose roughly 64 class periods or 64 days of instruction.
So when you're looking at tech ed, just the tech ed courses, you're going from 36 in tech ed 6 to 45 in tech ed 6, so that's plus 9. You're going from 72 to 45, and I don't have my calculator out, in 7th grade. 27, so minus 27, thank you for the assist there. And then another minus 27 in 8th grade. So, I'm sorry, 45. Like I said, I'm not always a math guy, especially late at night.
Yeah, about 45. That looks bad on me. I counted 63 in my head, so let me just sit down here for a second. No, okay, so we lose 45 there. We gain 45 with digital literacy in some of the grades. What is that digital literacy 8 in 8th grade?
Yeah, digital literacy 8 is the new course, 45 days in 8th grade. That's where the major
And it's
gain
like,
would be.
yeah, and the rest of them, it seems, you know, when you lose 4 days of, or you lose 7.5 days of PE, you can stomach it a little bit more. You know, when you have a big number like that, it just seems like.
Depends. As a former PE
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah, I understand that. It was my favorite class. But in good faith as a district, you obviously cannot get everything that is being taught now in, right? And I think that's what is being brought up in the community. In good faith as a district, can we, you know, say we're going to teach and give the opportunity to learn everything that they're learning now? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I think we need to really take a hard look at it, and as I said, a reset as to what it is we're teaching, what's ingrained in that, what is really in these new standards. What is it that we need to teach? What do students need to know and be able to do when they leave 8th grade? Do we believe that we can hit that mark with the current proposal? We do. We feel as if we can provide students a robust and rigorous tech ed program along with all the others, and that we can hit the mark for all 3 grades, and all of our students leaving 8th grade will be able to know and do what they need to in each and any one of those areas.
Are there additional questions or comments from the board?
I was just a little curious about the vacancies that have been, the tech ed positions that have been vacant for several months, it sounds like, and have been posted and not filled. So are those, the positions that have been vacant, are they at the middle level?
Yes, sir, at the middle level. Mr. Moran, you were here for all of that and have a better idea, potentially?
Correct. One is a technology education position at Middle School East. It is currently being filled by a substitute teacher through a third-party service. The other position is currently a computer education position. That position is also being filled by a substitute that is our employee. Okay, so the 2 positions, one is currently in technology education, the other is in the computer position.
I think I just have like, I feel like I see a distinction between like the tech ed A and B courses and like computers and like the tech and innovation course. They don't necessarily feel super interchangeable to me. They feel distinct. So that's just sort of one line of thinking I have.
Dr. Hannon, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, and I'd say they are distinct. However, with the 2 courses, there is an opportunity to keep some of the things that are currently being taught there intact and merge the 2. Like there is an opportunity there for that. With again going back to some things being perhaps taught in isolation there, and looking at the STEEL standards now being updated through all our curriculum too. So looking back and like really aligning for a more cohesive and coherent, really middle school alignment between science and tech ed, I think we have an opportunity to combine them.
I really apologize. I'm so sorry about that. Did your question get answered with regards to the vacancies? Excellent. Any other comments or questions from the table?
I do think change is hard. A reduction in force or furlough, what do we call it again? Well, attrition is how we're doing it, which is the preferred way. But just knowing from the industry sector that I come from, layoffs are extremely damaging. That's why we said totally that's not happening. And that's why we're taking this opportunity right now to take these 19 positions and look at them hard and long. Because if we do hire into these positions, we have them for a very long time. And we might not have this opportunity again, to Dr. Nicholson's point. I do see opportunity, I think art even, to get back to art, and a lot of people that are in art don't go to college. They want, art is their preferred where they're going. So they need art. In middle school, do you need sculpture and, pastels and watercolor as much? No, you just need a taste of it. When they get into high school, they'll have more of the different types of mediums of art. And I think that's what this is. I think this is a taste of tech ed and innovation and computers and literacy. And it does seem to me that it could be consolidated into 95 days a year, possibly, at the middle level, at the mid-level. I think that makes sense. And I appreciate more depth to these, to this. Dr. Nicholson, you did a nice job presenting. We've had a lot of, taking in a lot of the emails and the PowerPoint that was given to us and the letter. And I do think change is hard. I do respect your expertise, and I appreciate the detail in this second round of presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westphal. Go ahead, Mr. McGuire.
Possibly a closing thought. The one thing that I did think about as we talked about sort of the practical ramifications of the new curricula, looking at the current curricula, is to the extent that a lot of this is very general, frankly. A little bit of it is very specific. For the things that are very specific, are there pathway recommendations post the new curricula for those students that enjoy those current topics in the high school? Because the best reaction that I can think of is, with the exception of the very general things, maybe the recommendation is, well, these things that you tried in middle school have more prominent examples in the high school that you can access in a year or two. Because there's only a handful of these that are very specific, like the soldering, manufacturing, and safety, maybe electronics, but that's only a week, right? The typography and the design one. Frankly, the rest of them are fairly generic, and I think you kind of implicated that they're somewhat integrated elsewhere as well. So I think if we can help kind of the community understand that some of this consolidation has other ways of fulfillment, that might help with understanding sort of how you move forward from here, because a lot of this is incredibly generic, frankly.
Yeah, that was a great analysis and amount of feedback with regards to the overall. I appreciate that perspective, because I think that one of the hardest things for me in conversations about additions, lost, revisions, that type of thing, is that it's not just one thing. There's multiple things all at once, right? And then curricula is designed ideally to be integrated. But when you talk about pathways and getting a taste, I know Ms. Bridie brought up equity. Kids are not just getting more music, they're actually playing multiple instruments. So they're specialized, so they're not getting more, it's just a genre, right? So, and I know that Mr. Clellan brought that up last week in comment that, the slide is a little misleading to show about the lack of participation for those students, but that is what they are electing to specialize in and take. So that is their special, even though it's created in a separate category, music ensembles replace two specials. Those are specials. So I think that shifting the mindset to your point about pathways, and clearly building administrators can speak to this more, as well as central office administration, those conversations are having at course planning, in the counseling offices, right? So those kids by 8th grade know whether they want to be enrolled in tech school. They know if they want to take higher level science classes coming into the high school. They know if they want to continue with those type of specialized hands-on workshops here at the high school. So I think that when you think of it in terms of pathways, I think the way you described it really, it sums it up really nicely.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it goes back to the word I used earlier, which is exploratory. Certainly, if a student takes art for all 3 years, they're not diving deep into animation and ceramics and all of the things we would see if we walk down the art hallway here at the high school. Similar in music, when a student walks out of an ensemble in 8th grade, they're certainly not an accomplished musician to the point that they're going to PMEAs. Well, maybe some are in 9th grade, but you build on that as you go. And Tech Ed is no different. We have a robust program at the high school. We're always looking to improve and always looking to make sure students find, and I said it earlier, find their passion. Whether that be Tech Ed, whether that be art, whether that be music, we really want them to explore what's out there and find what they want to build upon once they get to the high school. So I think that was insightful.
Go ahead, Dr. Weston.
One last thing that I'll add is that I didn't really approve. We talk so much about what we're losing, so to speak, in the Tech Ed area. I really didn't appreciate until this presentation what we would be gaining in other areas. We are increasing the amount of time we're spending in music, increasing the amount of time we're spending in art in 6th and 7th grade. And that's a very important aspect of what I consider science-related education. We talk so much about STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. It really should be STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, because when you're doing science, you are working to solve problems that no one has solved before and defining problems that no one has defined yet. And to do that, you have to think about things in a creative way. You have to think about things in a way that have not been thought about in a particular way before. And that's what is encouraged with music and art instruction. We are not necessarily, music and art in 6th and 7th grade isn't necessarily going to turn students into musicians or artists necessarily, but it's going to help them learn to think in ways that are creative, and that creativity is applicable across the board, and especially, in their science, as you're thinking about things in a new way. The creativity that's fostered in music and art is carries over into that very strongly. So if we're cutting back on some instruction in Tech Ed, we're gaining things that will help students in creative and scientific thinking along the line. So it all fits together, and I think it nets out. Hopefully nets out positively. Still need to see what we're going to be doing in the Tech Ed classes, and I want to see that very, very soon.
And that's the accountability piece. I think that that's the accountability piece. I'm sorry, wait. That I keep going back to. And before we move on, unless anybody else has something to add, I wanted to go back to something that Mr. Williams said, which I think was really valuable. Because in a lot of ways, first of all, this is just lovely that we're having such productive conversation. Can I just say, it's just so nice. So I appreciate it. And the points of view brought to the table, they're sort of like a little bit like fresh air, because it comes with a perspective that is not always, or hasn't always been heard. And so, you spoke to a piece about, Mr. Williams, about the community having confidence in the teachers being on board. And I think that that's really critical, right? Because at the end of it, administration makes a recommendation, the board has to take action, and then there's an execution, right? So the execution piece of it is critical to the success of whatever the vote is, right? And so for me, and because this is committee, I not just a regular board meeting, what I would like to really understand, and I think the community deserves to understand, especially those at the middle level, with children at the middle level, is let's talk about how we can make this the best thing that it is, or that it could be, and what is the pathway to grow programming across all sections and subject areas. So when kids get to high school, they're really able to flourish and lock into what their future is. And so I think your point about teachers being on board, and listen, all of us here are here because we're advocates for one thing or another. I appreciate advocacy. I admire advocacy. I don't have to always agree with what's being advocated for, right? But I think that at the end of the day, we all should, and I believe that at the table we all do, have the best intentions for the school district and for the students that are served by the school district. So I think that your point about everybody being on board and chiming together is right on. Absolutely right on. So with that, I will open the open the floor rather to public comment. Because this is committee, we will allow a certain level of engagement and conversation with public comment. We're still going to keep public comment to 3 minutes. But if there are questions posed or the administration would care to respond or clarify, I invite that to happen, as long as no one on the board has issue with that. I think that's helpful. Sometimes it's hard to stand up for 3 minutes and it's like an okay next. This is education committee, so I think that this is the time to have the conversation prior to the vote. Does anyone take issue with that? Great. Okay, that is all that business stuff. Okie dokie. So we are going to go, I guess we'll just go in order. So we have Dr. Weir signed in first, so Dr. Weir is up.
Is this still on? Yeah, okay. We're good? All right. Good evening. My name is Dr. Matt Weir. I am the co-department chair for the Department of Technology and Engineering, and I'm also a tech ed teacher at Middle School West. I'm here tonight because we are at a crossroads regarding the future of our program. The idea is to consolidate or to trim the program or the time spent, the curriculum, or trim the time spent on them without losing quality. I'm here to tell you that in a lab setting, efficiency is the enemy of mastery. In tech ed, a standard is not a destination, it's a foundation. Let's look at the design and problem-solving standards. In 6th grade, we focus on exposure. Students use simple models and guide step-by-step builds. We are teaching them the alphabet of engineering, tool safety, and basic design thinking. However, in our advanced courses, we aren't repeating that lesson. We are moving to mastery. Those same standards are met through independent engineering cycles, so moving through the problem identification to rigorous testing, particularly in the civil engineering unit of bridge design building. Systems thinking. In 7th grade, we are not just building a circuit, we are troubleshooting a complex mechanical system. Critical decision making. Students are given open-ended problems where there is no instructional manual. When you consider these courses, you just don't speed up the learning. You fundamentally change the nature of the experience. You move from deep learning to surface level exposure. If we compress the curriculum, the first thing that goes is the iteration phase. In engineering, the most important lesson isn't when the project works, it's when it works the first time, it's when it fails. And that's when the student has the time and resources to reevaluate and try again. If we consider skills development surfaces, students will use tools, but they won't master them. Problem solving shrinks. We will be forced to give more cookie cutter projects to fit the timeline, robbing students the chance to think critically. Career pathways narrow. We are telling our future engineers we only have time to show you the basics rather than give them in-depth experience that sparks lifelong careers in STEM. Our community depends on a workforce that can rely on troubleshooting, innovativeness, and leading. By maintaining the integrity of these separate scaffolding courses, we can ensure that middle school isn't just checking a box for state requirements. We are building a pipeline for the future. Standards are the what, but our current course structure is the how. Please do not compromise the how.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Weir.
you.
Mr. Storm, before we move on to Mr. Storm, was there any engagement or any questions, or were you happy with your statement as made? Does anyone have anything to offer from the table? Okay. So then we'll move on to Mr. Storm.
Good evening. My name is Matt Storm. I'm a technology and engineering teacher at the high school and the co-department chair. I'm here tonight to discuss the proposed changes to middle school special area programming and what that truly means for our students. We often hear that middle school is a time of exploration, but interests don't just appear, they are built through exposure. For many students, especially those who struggle in a traditional desk and lecture environment, tech ed is the first place they find success. It's where they stop being the student who says, I'm not good at this, and become the student who realizes they are capable of trying and succeeding. These are our students who become problem solvers in the future. I've heard the argument that some of our curriculum is redundant, or that it overlaps with other areas. To be blunt, of course it is. In language arts, we don't stop teaching reading comprehension after 5th grade just because the students already learned how to read. We apply the skills to harder books, different genres, and more complex ideas. Tech ed is no different. As mentioned in the presentation earlier, we use the STEEL standard, specifically standard 3.56-8J as referenced earlier. And I'll read that quick. Use tools, materials, machines to safely diagnose, adjust, and repair systems. So that is used in our courses because different technologies require different sets of processes. Designing a bridge is not the same process as coding a robot or milling a part, even if they all fall under problem solving. When you call the standards redundant, we are actually describing them as reinforcement. The district's own comprehensive plan lists STEM as a top priority. It explicitly states a goal to build additional opportunities for early STEM engagement. Reducing access to these programs doesn't just contradict that goal, it ignores the reality of the technical school pathway. If a student doesn't spark an interest by 8th grade, they often lose the chance to complete technical tracks either here at the high school through our programming or at North Montco in one of the different technical opportunities. This isn't just a scheduling shift, it's a direct cut to a student opportunity and a step away from the standards we are mandated to teach. If we want our students to be STEM ready, we have to give them the time and the tools to actually do the work. Thank you guys for your time, and we appreciate the support and the support of our students.
Thank you, Mr. Storm. Okay, next up, does anyone want to add anything?
Just a quick comment.
Go ahead.
And I just want to commend and thank you both for speaking, because it shows the passion that this district and their educators have for their students and their job. So thank you. I also want to put on the record of this is what makes Perkiomen Valley possibly different than the neighboring districts that might not offer as much tech ed that we currently offer. So how much do we weigh that as well as individually we will decide in our vote. It makes our district special, and the educators make our district special. So thanks. That's just my last comment there. I know we have more to go. So
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay. Next up is Ms., I'm going to say your name wrong, I'm so sorry. Arkangeli? How close was I? Arkangeli, okay. Wasn't even close. You're up, my friend.
I apologize because this is going to be a little out of order. I'm kind of previewing the next discussion about the accelerated or the possibility of the gifted English class. This is Tracy Griffin. She's an 8th grade English teacher as well.
Give me 1 second. Are you speaking on this at all, or are you just taking this opportunity of public comment to speak about further in the agenda?
Yes, I'm just speaking about what's happening
Further
next.
in the agenda?
Yes.
No worries. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
We appreciate the district's interest in expanding opportunities for advanced learners, and we are encouraged by the idea of an accelerated ELA course at the middle level. We share the goal of challenging our students and helping them reach their full potential. However, we strongly believe that implementing such a program should be a thoughtful, well-developed process and not a rushed decision. Currently, we offer a geometry course at the middle level, which serves as a useful model. This course is not limited solely to gifted students. Rather, it is an accelerated option available to any student who meets clearly defined criteria. If we are to introduce an accelerated ELA class, we must first establish similar clarity. Who will be eligible to take this course? Will placement be determined by standardized tests, PSSA scores, teacher recommendations, or a combination of these measures? Without clearly defined and equitable criteria, we risk creating confusion and limiting access for students who would benefit most. It is also important to recognize that gifted identification does not always align across subject areas. Not every gifted student excels in English language arts, just as there are many high-achieving students who demonstrate exceptional ability, passion, and growth in reading and writing, but may not carry that gifted label. Any new program must be designed to serve this broader group of learners, ensuring that opportunity is based on demonstrated ability and readiness in ELA specifically. At the same time, we as English teachers, because as a department chair I'm speaking on both middle level, we are concerned about the impact of the majority of our students, those in the middle who don't carry a specific label. These students make up roughly 80% of our population at Perkiomen Valley, and their needs must be equally prioritized. As we build opportunities for advanced learners, we must ensure we are not unintentionally neglecting students who rely on strong, consistent core instruction to continue their growth. As a Penn State alum, I hate to even bring up this study that was conducted by the University of Michigan, but they do indicate that curriculum development requires over 100 hours of planning, collaboration, and of revision with all stakeholders involved. This level of work is not manageable within a single summer. Without that time and input, we risk creating a program that lacks coherence, consistency, and effectiveness. So in closing, I am here to speak on all of the ELA teachers' behalf. We support the idea of an accelerated ELA course. However, we urge the board to approach this initiative carefully, and please do not rush into this for next school year. Thank you.
Beautifully timed. Very nice. You practiced it. That was fantastic. I apologize for butchering your name. So I know that we're going to have conversation about this. That was just a wild mind shift just now, actually, because I feel so strongly about both of these things, but they're sort of in silos, right? Ish. I hear you, and I couldn't agree more. I hope that you feel, and I hope that the conversation reflects that this conversation is finally taking a step forward, as opposed to just us talking about this for the last 6 years plus. So I think that we'll have some clarification with regards to rollout, and I think Ms. Franco's here, and so I want to make sure that we are very mindful and aware of, obviously, the fidelity that we want the process to be. I think you're going to speak to it. Not this second, but when we get to that portion of that would be my hope. That was the teaser that was offered to me. So hopefully that's the case. Yes? No, right, but you're here and we need you. And then Dr. Russell and Dr. Nicholson are here as well. Yeah, we need all of you all of the time. So that's why we're all together at 9 o'clock. Okay, Ms. Godshall, would you like to speak? You said maybe, but you're welcome to join us. Yes.
Hi, My name is Kristen Gottschall, and I am the current Computers, Technology, and Innovations teacher at Middle School West. Prior to this year, I spent the previous 10 years in the same position at Middle School East. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I understand the need to evaluate programming based on enrollment. However, my course enrollment is directly impacted by how classes are structured. After 6th grade, students must choose between computers, French, and Spanish, and that decision becomes a 2-year commitment. World language courses are understandably higher enrolled because they offer a clear incentive. Advanced opportunities in high school that supports college readiness. My program does not offer a comparable incentive, which places it at a disadvantage in student selection. This also, in turn, creates a gap in computer skills that is seen and felt by middle school and high school level teachers. Additionally, with the recent removal of the technology graduation requirement, it is now possible for a student's last formal computer technology course to be in 6th grade. I also appreciate the effort to introduce an 8th grade digital literacy course that, from my understanding, would be shared between my position and the librarian. However, I would encourage consideration of earlier and more consistent instruction. Students are issued student laptops in kindergarten. By 8th grade, they've already spent many years on district-issued devices, and without structured guidance, I consider repurposing the course, as many are not receiving direct computer instruction because they are selecting the Spanish or French options. By broadening the curriculum to include more computer applications, digital skills, and business or entrepreneurship topics, we have an opportunity to increase engagement and participation among a more diverse group of students. My goal is to ensure students have meaningful, consistent, and equitable access to technology computer education throughout middle school. These skills are not optional. They are essential for students' future success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from the table? Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Lofton.
I mean, I would just say that I do hope, and I think we had this conversation a little bit on Monday night as well, that digital literacy is addressed K-12. But this is just an opportunity to provide a deeper dive into certain selected areas. But, you know, I 100% agree we should not be waiting till 6th grade to be talking about any of these issues.
Yeah, I completely agreed, and I believe it was mentioned, but I'll say it again. We do explore digital literacy and explorations K through 5. So there is instruction on that K through 5, and we are actively looking at all of the specials across the board in middle school and how it can be infused there. So high school, there's definitely instruction here and there, and we need to strengthen that as well. But right now, we do know they do receive instruction K to 5. We're strengthening in middle school and looking at the high school for thereafter.
Okay, that was the last noted sign-in comment. Does anyone else have anything to offer? So you just need to state your name and your municipality. That's where you live in the district.
Hi, my name is Jonah Ryder. I live in Schwenksville, and I'm here today to talk about the tech ed issue. I'm a sophomore at this school. I'm currently in the advanced manufacturing class, and this class is the most fun I've ever had in school. I love it every day. I get to come here, and I get to work out there in the shop, and at the end, I get to build something and take it home to my family and show them. Put it in the basement and just look at it. And you really can't, I don't think you could replicate that with the Tech Ed B class, because that's on the computer. And trying to combine those two classes, everyone talks about how it's generally the same. I don't think it is. With the computers, and then we're going out in the shop, I just don't think you could really replicate that. Working with the wood and then being on the computers just isn't the same. And I think it's important to have a couple students here tonight just to talk about our point of view on this topic. Yeah, I didn't really do good in school, in middle school. It was hard for me to find something I liked. And as soon as I had that wood shop class in 6th grade, it was like my eyes opened up. Every day I'd go in there and Dr. Weir would teach us something new. And then it builded upon that in 7th grade and then 8th. And then I took Intro to Manufacturing last year, and that's when we really started making cool projects. And nothing beats it. Nothing's the same. And this year, Mr. Storm has just taught me so much. And I think we need more people to really open their eyes to this topic and this type of class, because you can learn so much throughout these classes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out and sharing. Would anyone else have anything else to offer?
Before I talk, I have a question. Is there going to be another comment section after we talk about gifted?
No.
Okay, then, all right. So, I'm Kate Zapla. I teach at East. I've been on the gifted committee since its inception a long time ago. I saw on the slide that we are talking about splitting a teacher between East and West. Currently, that would be, with the case sizes at each school, the numbers would be over what could be a caseload for one teacher. So what is the plan for writing those GIEPs, doing the meetings? If regular ed teachers are gonna do that, that's one more thing on their plate. I'm super excited about the possibility of an honors English course, but like Ms. Arcangeli said, not all kids are gonna be gifted in English. So if we're calling that the gifted programming, will every kid qualify? I hesitate to take, they have different instructional needs as well. And I don't want to take away from that. We were invited to go to, I believe it was Lower Moreland, to see their gifted program back with Dr. Champagne Lee. They had a phenomenal setup. And all of the work that we did towards looking at what we could do to make this more robust feels like it'll get cut if we cut teachers in certain areas. We're talking about a lot of them, and I understand the cost savings, and I understand all of that. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at legally, are our caseloads then going to be too big? And what are we taking away from these kids who do have IEPs saying that they need special accommodations?
I appreciate that. This is why I wanted to have public comment after the entire presentation, but the way that it was worded, it's not your fault, it was Bob's fault. Okay, so it's fine, all good. We're in committee, right? No big deal. So the gifted conversation, I know, Bob left, so that's why everything will be his fault until we adjourn. So the gifted conversation has been lengthy, and I've been in those meetings with you. And so many parents are invested in it. It's a whole shift of mindset and conversation, and it really is something that it's strange to get the updates in Education Committee, because we were, especially with Dr. Smith, in a one-off, kind of an ad hoc situation for so long. But we also have been sort of in a holding pattern, right? Dr. Moulton has done so much legwork to figure out kind of a path forward, and Dr. Champagne Lee is going to be returning to us. There's Bob, shh. Don't tell him anything. Dr. Champagne Lee is returning to us and will be able to obviously lead the charge along with curriculum to help all of that coalesce. I know that we're going to be talking more about that. Caseloads was something that I asked about as well. For context, for those that maybe aren't as well versed in the whole procedure at middle level gifted, it is currently an enrichment program. It's pulled out. It's delivered, I think, 90 minutes a cycle, right? Tell me what it is. I don't know. There's no time set anymore. Okay. But it's on a cycle, and it is a pullout, and it is an enrichment. It is not differentiated core instruction. And that, to me, has always been sort of my biggest beef with it, for lack of a better term. I know that there was conversation about identification and access. That's been a conversation that I've had directly, especially with Dr. Russell, with regards to, we have a whole pool of students, and I've been saying this in these gifted meetings for years at this point, that test advanced very, very early on, but are yet not identified as gifted. A GIEP, as everybody in the room, I think, at this point knows, is not the same exactly as an IEP, although it does still need to be managed and meetings met and things, and there's goals associated with it. So I think that we need to hear about the presentation, but your questions are noted, and they were all ones along the same lines of what I had. The development of robust rigor for honors level class also noted. Everybody's typing furiously, and I think it's an exciting time to have the conversation, because I feel like something's actually going to happen with it. So that's my 2 cents on that. Does anyone have anything else to offer about that? Go for it. You can come up.
Hello, my name is Ada Masaja. I live in Schwanksville. I just wanted to touch on the reducing of the manufacturing and everything. I'm not actually a tech ed student. It wasn't like my thing, but I have a lot of respect for Dr. Weir here. When I was in his class, 7th and 8th grade, he was probably one of the best teachers at West, and I don't have anything bad to say. He coached me. He was a great guy. But it's interesting that manufacturing programs are being reduced considering they're preparing nearly 20% of jobs in Pennsylvania. While like other careers like art, music, they have a fraction of the careers are 0.02 in Pennsylvania. Students, and then you guys said that you guys touch on it in 4th grade about electronic currents. You're not fully developed in 4th grade, not even close. You're not even fully developed right now, but you are not maintaining any of that information at that time in 4th grade. I probably couldn't tell you anything I learned in 4th grade about any electronic currents, but that's for another time. And I would like to say, I'm just confused why like you would like take them out, take all the like manufacturing jobs out when it is having that big of a career thing. And there's my best friend Zane, he does North Monco because of Dr. Weir, and like he wanted to take a step up and like learn stuff about that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, both of you. Anyone else? If you can just hold for 1 second. I just wanted to see if anybody on the administration side could just clarify with regards to the perception of the reduction of the quote-unquote shop portion of Tech Ed A. Because I heard some different things from the students, and I just want to make sure that there's clarification around what reimagining the curriculum in tech actually means. Mr. Handerhan, I don't know if you can speak to that. I just want to clarify that we're not trying to cut shop.
Not at all, just reimagining it based around the new standards. Yes, so although like the current curricula is written and it has the standards within there, just making sure that it's fully aligned to those standards and really fully aligned to the practices as well. Yep.
Do you guys have questions about that? I know that that's such a broad and like, I don't want it to sound like it's not acknowledged that shop is important or that Tech Ed A is important.
I fully understand that. It was the part when we talked about missing 64 of those classes, those like days of those classes.
So,
Still gonna be able to keep up with the curriculum when we're missing all those days.
go ahead, Mr. Handerhan.
So are we going to be able to keep up the curriculum with the reduction of days? So that will be difficult work, right? We have great teachers, as you guys all emphasized, and so that will be our, we have constraints like to work through, and we'll do some problem solving to ensure that we have a rigorous, great course so that future students have similar experiences as you guys do. That would be the goal.
I also have a question about combining all 3 subjects because I feel like they're complete polar opposites of each other. Not complete, but like computers, like my 6th grade year when I took it, I only took it 1 year, I learned about Scratch. And then when I had Dr. Weir's class, I was in the workshop doing like, making like things, like electronic things. So and then my Tech Ed B class, I was doing graphic design. So I'm confused about that.
The question was how to combine courses that are like different, right? That you learn different things in. And you're right, it will be a challenge, but it's something we'll have to work through.
Well, so are you guys like going to cut some things out that I would learn? Like, are you cutting like certain things out?
No, I would hope not. No, we wouldn't necessarily want to cut things out. We would look for opportunities in other courses perhaps of where they could be integrated there as well.
In the same amount of time though?
That would be the goal. Yeah, there's lots of things to work out, right? Like I hear your passion and I love that. So like all of the questions that you're bringing up, like those are the things that we'll be tasked with.
So just to follow on to that, I would hope that throughout our curriculum, we're looking for more and more opportunities for students to be, moving away from what Dr. Russell would call the sit and get, right? You're not just sitting there being talked at, and that we are giving our students lots of different opportunities to be hands-on and be up out of their seats, being creative and having the opportunity to physically interact with the world and, be, our outdoor classrooms give them the opportunity to do things that are outside and interact with the natural world, be, in science class, being able to build things and create things just across the curriculum. I hope that's a goal that we're going to be working towards.
I will say that's absolutely a goal. That's the crux of STEEL standards, but that's also the goal in non-STEELs standards courses, right? The sit and get, when I said earlier today, being able to meet students where they are today, that's where we need to be, not just in STEEL standards courses, but English language arts and math. We need to make sure we're doing, not just sit and get. So I completely agree with you.
One of the greatest benefits of being able to have conversations like this and listening to the different perspectives of the importance of hands-on learning, one of the things that, to echo Mrs. Lofton, what you were saying about the sit and get and how we're moving away from that, hopefully, as a district, I think that that's really what the whole point of the recommendation really is to reinvent the way that instruction is delivered. It made me think, I know that Dr. Sachs is working and has done very extensive work on pathways after graduation. And to me, based on especially the students' feedback, that is at the core of what her initiative is, to allow for students, once they get to the high school, to really specialize. I know Mr. Burke is here. I don't know if he has anything to add to the pathways conversation, but not to put him on the spot, but I do appreciate very much, and I think that this board very much supports pathways that are I want to say traditional, but it's actually are traditional. For the longest time, especially when all of us were going through high school, the pathway of success was to college, and that is not everyone's pathway. And that should be not only acknowledged, it should be fostered, and it should be celebrated, that there are multiple pathways and multiple areas of interest to really work towards everybody else's talent. So I thought exactly the same thing, Mrs. Lofton, that you did. Go for it.
My name is Carrie Kirstinger. I am a tech ed teacher. I was 14 years at Middle School East, and the past 2 years I've been at Middle School West. We show up because we like to see the light bulbs turn on in kids every day. And those light bulbs turn on because of the connections that are made starting young and cross-curricular between classes. And those light bulbs only get turned on if they're able to have connections within the course. For example, one of the comments made was, well, there's only 5 days of electricity here, or electronics is just 7 days, and then there's 24 days of soldering, manufacturing, and safety. That soldering, manufacturing, and safety builds upon what they learned. It's not a unit that is dropped and left behind, and now we transition and move on to something else. Everything we do in all of our classes builds upon the current content and adds to it. We watch students in engineering and design process where they learn how to use a triangle and they struggle in holding 2 different tools at the same time to draw a straight line at 90 degrees. And then now they're drawing and designing bridges with all different types of angles extremely neatly, but watching them compare their first thumbnail sketches to the drawing that they have left and seeing them go, wow, I really did a great job. I cooked at this. Hey, Miss K, do you see how locked in I am right now? They lock into our courses. And we're always going to show up for you no matter what we're teaching, guys. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Last thoughts. Anyone else from the floor? Anyone else from the table?
Sorry, just real quick. We have all these tech ed teachers here today because they're fighting for what they think. And I just find it hard to believe that you guys aren't in their shoes right now. You don't really teach that class, which I just don't understand why we make the decision for them. I feel like they know best how their classroom works and how their curriculum works the way they teach it.
I appreciate you guys showing up to engage. I think honestly, student voice is probably the most wonderful part of any type of interaction we have. And I'm certainly not going to sit and lecture you about process and procedure in public education because it's already 9 o'clock. Actually, it's 9:20. But just as they are educators, and we have administrators and curriculum folks at the table here, and our principals are all right there, there's actually just a way things get done. And your teachers, as wonderful advocates for you, I mean, they will literally walk through fire for you. There is no question that anybody in this room wouldn't do that. They absolutely have context for how decisions get made in public school. 100% they do. And, you know, to the point that was just made, they're never not going to show up for you. So that's the closing thought there. Okay, so we
Comment? Sorry.
go for it, Dr. Weston.
I very much appreciate the input we had from Dr. Weir and Mr. Storm because it kind of addresses some of the concerns I have about the proposal here and the reductions in tech ed instructional time. You know, the importance of the hands-on aspect, and you know, as Dr. Weir said, you know, the best learning doesn't necessarily take place when the experiment works for the first time. The best learning takes place when the experiment goes wrong, and then you have to figure out what it is that should have happened that didn't and how to fix it. It kind of puts me in mind of a quote from one of my favorite authors and a great scientist himself, Isaac Asimov, who said the most exciting phrase in science is not necessarily eureka or I've found it, but gosh, that's funny. Because when you get that, it's that point of the unexpected observation that things open up and you find different pathways to explore. And, you know, as with if you're cutting back on your time, you don't have as much opportunity for that. He pointed out that he anticipates possibly going to more cookie cutter type labs, which are illustrative of principles rather than investigating principles. And that kind of is inconsistent with the approach that you're talking about that's a more phenomenologically based approach to scientific instruction. So I'm leery here. I understand also that some of these changes, that these changes are prompted at least in part by fiscal and staffing concerns. So my question is, if the board does not endorse these changes at this time, where does that leave us?
And I would say if the changes aren't endorsed at this time, we're back to the drawing board. We would have to take a look not only at staffing, really district-wide, but we'd have to work very hard with Mr. Weaver on balancing or trying to rebalance the budget for next school year. As this was cooked into or baked into, you know, I think I covered the areas and the reasons for all of this, both for this year and for many years to come. As well as the curriculum realignment, not just for tech ed, but in other areas. So, you know, I do think there'd be some meetings that that would have to happen. We'd have to look at some other ways, and we'd really have to, you know, go back to square one to really rethink some of the staffing implications and other ways that we would, you know, move forward.
Okay, so not endorsing these at this time puts us in a difficult fiscal and staffing position. And that kind of puts me in mind of another quote from Sir Lawrence Bragg, who was a very prominent physicist in the early 20th century, who said, "We haven't the money, so we've got to think." And I think this is our best effort at thinking through the problem. I think we have to ask our faculty to come up with creative solutions to address the tech ed teaching, to make sure that the instruction is up to the standard that we've had in the past.
And Dr. Weston, to your point about both of those things, and back to all the way around the circle to the difficult conversations and sometimes difficult recommendations for different reasons, we really did have a very similar amount of advocacy towards Spanish, and committee structures were very different then. So it was a much different environment to have the conversation in. It wasn't necessarily about dollars, and it wasn't about retirements or attritions. It was about programming. And generally, in my tenure on the board, I've really never been really moved or driven by the financial piece, Mr. Weaver. I let him worry about that part. The thing that drives me and my point of view on this board is really what the best experience for students is. And when we have meeting after meeting and year after year about changes that need to happen to student experience at the middle level, and then we're presented, two things are true at once, multiple things can be true at once, with an opportunity to create a different experience, that's where I think, like I said to you a little earlier, that's where the accountability piece comes in. The students aren't going to forget that, all of a sudden they're not going to do X, Y, Z because it was removed. They're not going to forget that. So that's the challenge. And I don't think that it's a light lift, but I do think that it's worthwhile lift. And I do have confidence in the fact that administration wouldn't have brought the recommendation to the table if they weren't up to the challenge of meeting what truly is best. Obviously for the stability of the district, but really in the student-centered model that they presented.
And I expect that the administration and our faculty will do what they need to do to deliver the best experience for our students.
Wholeheartedly, 100%. In all areas, not just this one. I mean, this is one area, but truly the student experience, this is one section of student experience. There's an ocean of them in our district, and we are very special and very different for that reason. Back to Mr. Williams' point about what sets PV apart. Are there last thoughts before we move forward in the agenda?
Hello, Bob Schumacher. I'm a tech ed teacher here at the high school. So I just wanted to pose a question to the admin. If this proposal were to get accepted and go through, I was curious on the feasibility of this being ready for August. At the high school, we've been redesigning the engineering program. It is 4 courses. It's been a few years, and we've only gotten through 2 courses successfully rewritten. So I don't know. I just don't understand how we are going to be able to reimagine all of this, rewrite all of this for the start of this school year.
Yeah, 5 courses can be dentist.
Yeah.
5 courses.
I look to either, go ahead, Mr. Handerhan.
Yeah, it will be a challenge. However, we do have a framework in place already. We have the standards to go by, so it will take some dedication. We will begin immediately. So we'll begin as soon as possible on this work, and I believe we would find a way to get it done.
I will add, we knew from the get-go when the ERIP was put into play that there'd be a number of retirements, and we didn't really know exactly where some of that would go. But as a curriculum team, we've been talking for months about the fact that there's going to be a number of curricula that need to be rewritten, a number of courses. We're not just looking at tech ed, but if this should receive support tonight and we move forward, there are revisions that need to happen in art, and there are revisions that need to happen in FCS. There are revisions that need to happen in health and PE. So it is a heavy lift. It is a very heavy lift for the summer. I know we're up to it. That is the mandate, and we wouldn't be providing this recommendation if we didn't feel we could get there.
I appreciate that, Dr. Nicholson. And just to also, I reiterate, I know that curriculum, along with building building administration and then central office additional administration. These conversations didn't just start in April. So these conversations have been ongoing for, at the very least, 6 weeks, probably longer than that. And so it didn't, I know optically by the time it gets to YouTube, it seems like it's out of the blue, but I just wanted to, to reiterate that you actually are doing something all day, and this is part of what that something is, accurately, correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Everybody's relieved to hear that. Okay, I'm going to close public comment if no one has anything else. Fabulous. Okay, Dr. Moulton. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One thing that we had chatted
You just have to come up to the mic, please. Thank you.
Andrea Nahila, I teach 8th grade math at West. Just one little comment we wanted to mention too for teachers being involved in the rewriting. When it comes to us participating in that, we're limited to 6 hours in the summer. So just something we wanted the board to keep in mind too. We have a 6-hour limit on collaboration time.
Okay. I'll take it to the union. We're in the middle of negotiations. All jokes aside, it's noted. And I think that the reality of that, Dr. Nicholson, do you want to speak to that piece of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a summer different than any other. There are 6 hours of collaboration, but in all reality, the level of curriculum writing that will be done for most of these courses would not qualify for collaboration anyway. So that we would be looking at flex or for pay to get this done. So collaboration is a very specific 6 hours for a very specific type of work. And really the level of work we're looking at over the summer. At the end of the summer, there may be 6 hours of collaboration to get teachers together to look at this. But the vast majority of this work would not fall in that collaboration area. It would be for flex time or for pay.
Thank you for clarifying. And there's no minimization there. I'm just making a joke. Okay. I had one other thought, and then it went away. It wasn't important. Okay. Now I'm going to close the floor for conversation. Okay. Dr. Moulton. Oh, go ahead. Well, that's separate. Go ahead, Go ahead, Mrs. Lofton.
I am curious if that was an interesting point brought up about the amount of lift, that we want to make sure that this is being done right. Are you confident that this can be done over the summer, or should this be an action that we implement for the 27-28 school year with long-term subs in place for next year?
I'm confident we can get this done over the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, the hiring an LTS for next year would not be an option. I don't think it would be the best way forward. And quite honestly, this would be the priority as far as the curriculum work goes. Some of the other pieces can be delayed a little bit. We don't necessarily need to have everything 100% outlined in some of the other courses, but this is probably the heaviest lift that we're looking at.
Okay, and you're confident that
Absolutely.
it'll be in place?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That made me think of what I was going to say. Fabulous. I just, to point out to the community, and I think the board already knows, we are really at the crossroads as a district to a lot of change in the next couple of months. That's sort of observational, it's sort of rhetorical, but that's going to be across all levels, all buildings, including the district office. So I just think that, and I hope that we are all moving forward with the same good intention to make sure that everything is better than it's ever been. That's all. Okay, Dr. Moulton, let's talk about gifted.
Excuse me? Didn't we agree to amend the agenda to take the vote after this section was completed?
Thank you for coming back, Bob. So we did make the motion to have public comment. Do you want to do the vote now and before we move on to gifted? I thought that, I don't know how.
That was a part of my motion.
The vote was to vote in the middle of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Is that how you have it documented,
Does anybody
Dr.
else have
Russell?
a misunderstanding about that?
Just in Dr. Moulton's time. I think it's fair for her to do her presentation. We have heard public comment about the gifted program as well already in your absence.
I was listening.
Okay. I would like for her to be able to give her presentation. I think we can wait a few more minutes to vote. That's just my thought.
I was going to finish the agenda. I had a script for amending the agenda, but I wanted you to be able to do it if you felt needed. I would have taken a different tact, which is fine.
But we did unanimously decide on.
So then let's vote.
Ms.
Okay.
White's running
No,
the meeting. Why don't we
fine. You
let
could
Ms. White run the meeting?
No, it's fine. We'll vote and we'll move on because we're not going to, okay, so, Mr. Liggett, go ahead. You make the motion there. We're on item 2.02.
I move to take the motion from the table.
Okay, is there a second to take the motion from the table? Without a second, the motion dies.
Second.
Oh, excellent. Dr. Weston motions to take the item from the table. Okay, are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Lofton.
Can you clarify what exactly we're voting? So if we take the item
This
from
vote
the
would be to
table,
remove the, well, you know what? Let's let Bob explain it because he'll be able to explain it better than I will anyway.
so you're saying that you don't want to vote tonight? We're voting to not vote.
I voted to take the motion off of the table. We moved on Monday night to lay a motion on the table to approve this. So we would be voting, right now, it's whether or not we're taking it from the table, apparently, according to Ms. White. This
Well,
is her
that's what I
meeting.
heard you say just now.
So taking it from the table means that now, then we're going to actually take action on the motion after we take it off the table?
That would be my understanding.
Okay.
So we're voting to proceed to the vote, essentially.
Your mic's not on, Dr. Weston. Would you mind putting it on and just repeat that? Would you mind? Your mic has to be on.
We're voting now to take the motion off the table, bring it up for a vote, and proceed with voting. So we're not actually voting on the approval of the special area programming adjustments. We're voting on moving forward with that vote. Do I understand you correctly, Bob?
I think it's creating a more, would you like to vote on this tonight? It's on principle that Bob's making the motion. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear as to what your motion just now with Dr. Weston's second actually accomplishes.
At that point, in my understanding of how this would work, this would be taking it off of the table. So yes, we could decide to vote in the negative, that we're not going to remove this from the table, and then that dies. That is one way that we can go to do this. If we were to vote in the affirmative, where we would take it, where we would say, yes, we are going to take this off the table, then it becomes back to the original motion, and then we were actually debating the issue. So yes, at this point, it would be whether or not we're going to take it off of the table.
So we're voting on whether we're going to take action on the motion?
Eventually.
Okay,
Well,
maybe.
But technically, we never tabled it. We made a new action item for tonight's meeting to vote on this, so
But it was tabled on Monday.
it was not tabled.
Oh,
It was
wasn't?
tabled.
It was moved.
It was moved to table the motion. I'd love to go to YouTube and we could review it, but we can't do that. But the motion that I made
Bob,
was to table it.
Mr. Leggett, it's just unnecessary. So the objective tonight is to give direction to administration as to whether or not the board supports moving the middle school special area programming. That's what the objective is tonight, okay? I understand that you have very big feelings about Robert's Rules of Order, and I appreciate that about you. But you're just confusing everybody. So you made the motion when we sat down to take public comment because it wasn't posted on the agenda, and we agreed that that should happen after the presentation from administration. Correct?
That would be part A of what I moved.
Okay. So part B, in the soup of that, was missed by me, I apologize, was that you wanted to hold the vote mid-agenda rather than wait for 2.02.
Correct.
Okay. And
Which is-
now you've motioned, because I said that I wanted to wait until after the agenda, to hold the vote until 2.02. Is that accurate?
It is, which would go against
Okay.
the motion that we took
Earlier.
previously.
Got it. So collectively, we have a
Collectively, you can do
motion
whatever you
and a
want.
second, and now we have discussion. Would the board like to vote now, or would the board like to vote at 2.02?
Oh, my goodness.
I just want to
Let's
make
vote
sure
now.
we're all on the
Okay,
same page.
Yes, intending that yes means we are voting now.
You want to vote now?
Let's vote now.
Cindy, how about you?
Yes, I would like to vote now.
Mr. McWilliams? Mr. Williams, I'm sorry. I'm looking this way. It's fine. Mr. McWilliams,
Is that
you're like a
number
cheeseburger.
5 at McDonald's?
Number 5,
I'll
Mr.
do
Williams, I'm
yes.
sorry.
I'll do yes.
Dr. Weston?
Yes, I would like to vote now.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes.
Ms. Bridie?
Yes.
Mr. Liggett, you made the motion.
Believe it or not, yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll vote yes, just to play nice. Okay, so we are going to vote now. Would anyone like to motion, let me read it from here, to approve the middle school special area programming adjustment as presented and discussed?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. McKinney motions, Dr. Weston seconds. Okay, would you like to do an around the table vote, Mr. Liggett?
Or I would ask whether or not anybody had any discussion
Oh.
before we move to a vote.
Does
If
anyone
I
have
do-
any item for discussion? Any comment or discussion? Wow, I'm really screwing up tonight. Just awful. I know, Bonnie's not here, obviously. It's the mask, right. We don't need Bonnie. Go ahead. Does anyone have any comment or question? Okay, seeing none. Mrs. Lofton?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Dr. Weston?
Yes.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes.
Ms. Bridie?
No.
Mr. Liggett?
No.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Okay, and my vote, Ms. White, is yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and motion carries. Okay. That was so much harder than I feel like it needed to be. So that is noted. Dr. Russell, were you able to follow that bouncing ball?
I have a 6-3 vote, yes.
In favor?
For the program adjustments.
Understood. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming out and advocating. Thank you to administration for the advocacy on your end as well. And we, as the board, look forward to next steps. Okay. Is everyone okay to move on with the agenda as presented for item number 3, gifted programming? Okay, Dr. Moulton, thank you for your patience.
No problem. Okay, so I'll try to make this not too long then. Okay, so just want to provide some updates on the work that we've been doing overall this year to improve our gifted programming. We're really looking to figure out how we can build our capacity in order to, engage in program redesign. And ultimately, we need to create some collaboration structures to help strengthen our overall alignment and gifted programming. So we're going to first talk about elementary tonight, and then we're going to talk about the upper levels. Before I move on to improving elementary, I just want to take a minute, because I didn't have the opportunity at previous meetings, to just present a quick review of the overall elementary review that we received. And I just want to highlight it was incredibly positive. We had excellent feedback, and I just want to take a minute to highlight those. It was reported that our teachers were incredibly dedicated specialists, and they were observed providing consistent and specialized instruction. In terms of the program, they highlighted the high-quality enriching program that they were providing, commenting on featuring robotics, problem-solving, critical thinking. They got to see examples of many of these things and were quite impressed. commented on the strong parent satisfaction. There was a couple of even parent feedback. 3 of them used the word amazing, which I just put in quotes. So I thought that that was great. And really highlighted a lot of structured collaboration that was both reported and observed between our gifted support teachers and our general ed teachers. So it was really a powerful review. With that said, we're always looking to strengthen our programs based on our commitment to continuous improvement. So we met with the elementary team and really provided them these accolades, but also wanted to talk about if you could improve your program, how would you do it? And we really defined it as improving the rigor. They really wanted to improve the rigor. And so in trying to figure out how can we improve the rigor, we talked about a partnership with CNI and really trying to make sure that we're really closely aligning our gifted curriculum with the standards and scope and sequence at each of the levels. So our plan was to basically start doing some collaborations with CNI to create different and extension activities that would be aligned to the standards. And initial meetings, our hope is to start this spring with continued development using professional development time into next school year to really build and strengthen that program. We also talked about investigating some computer-based programs that are out there now and looking to see if we could use those as a supplemental resource. We're looking at cost, the efficacy of those programs, and how they would align with our current systems. And we also looked at this, maybe seems trivial, but it's actually quite important. Supporting the allocation of resources of materials to make sure there's equitable access across all of our buildings. And what we just want to really make sure that we're doing is this isn't an oversight, but we're really doing this with purpose and intent to make sure it's done in a coordinated and logistical fashion. So everybody has access to all the books that they need. It's already pre-ordered and it's available. So really just making sure that we're doing that purposefully. I just want to highlight, too, that our gifted education teachers, or gifted specialists, sometimes they're called, did apply to attend a 3-day conference this summer at Penn State. Hopefully they'll be approved, and we're really looking forward to sharing the information that they received, because I think they're going to get some powerful tools that they're going to share back with us that is going to help with our programming and us moving forward. So that's our overall plan for elementary and how we were thinking about, improving an already excellent program. In terms of middle level, for the 2026-2027, for 6th grade, we talked about utilizing a cluster model. And what a cluster model is, it's a strategic scheduling practice to make instruction more targeted. So we're intentionally placing small groups of students that are identified as mentally gifted and also high achievers together with the overall goal of reducing the educational range of the learners within that class, which will create your critical mass in order to help support meaningful differentiation. So we'd be selecting high achievers based on those scoring criteria, maybe scoring advanced on their PSSAs. There might be some other criteria involved as well. Talking about the gifted support teacher providing push-in support for ELA to provide differentiation within that clustered class. Continuing the use of I&E time to provide differentiation and extension opportunities to meet the IEP goals. And then using that advisory time as needed to support advancing the gifted GIEP goals. In terms of 7th and 8th grade, the thought again is to utilize the same cluster model that I just described for 6th grade for next year. So we're going to use a similar clustering model that we just talked about for 6th grade. Continued use of intervention and enrichment time to provide differentiation and extension opportunities, using advisory as needed to support the goals. And then taking the pause and creating the honors ELA class for the 2027-2028 school year. Again, we want to give time to design this course, as was talked about, and how are we going to do this meaningfully and with purpose, and what will this course look like? And that will give us the time to really plan for that. And in terms of the high school planning, This really kind of focuses around creation of a high school gifted coordinator. So really with the high school, what we were looking to do is support collaboration structures and consultation models. We really needed to help kind of align what we were providing at the high school. And the creation of a high school gifted coordinator, or even using the supervisor of equity and student services to lead, just a point person that would help to kind of create this expansion and really help with this coordination is where we're focusing on. And the idea would be that this person or this role would help provide professional development and coaching support for differentiation across the different content areas based on the student's GIEP goals, help facilitate mentorship opportunities to support individualization and student voice. And this could be teacher to student mentorship or community member to student mentorship. And then supporting that consultation between the gifted case manager and the general ed teacher, kind of acting as that consultant and connector for collaborative GIEP development. So the intent for this role is really to strengthen the high school program by providing consistency and efficiency, staff support, and really helping to strengthen that program through that coordination and consultation. And the success of all of this, elementary all the way through high school, really depends on our capacity to implement it effectively, and we're going to need some professional development as a critical component in order to implement this effectively. And the areas that we want to focus on for professional development are those instructional strategies for gifted learners. Curriculum development and alignment is going to be a big part of that. How are we expanding out our scope and sequence? Really developing and improving our collaboration and communication systems. If we're doing some push-in support and push-in models as part of this, we really need to know how we're going to use effective communication systems and how we're going to collaborate in order to help differentiate our programming. And then, of course, program implementation and Chapter 16 compliance, just making sure that our program is compliant with Chapter 16 regs and our reports are compliant and our GIEPs. So those are areas that we'd like to focus on.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Moulton. If we can go back to the elementary slide. So one of the things that I'm hoping you can touch on, at least briefly, I think increasing rigor and better aligning higher thinking curriculum at the elementary level is fantastic. Right now, again, the model is really more of an enrichment with some different features baked into what those enrichments look like. I don't know that it is completely equivalent in every building, but I think hearing you say that there would be a drive to create equity among buildings is fantastic. Are you able to talk about identification and the mode in which that's taken care of, and then also how differentiated instruction for those that are identified not as gifted but as advanced would maybe benefit from this?
Sure. When you say identification for your first question, you're talking about identification for gifted?
Correct.
So how does that happen? So we participate in a universal screening process for giftedness, where in second grade students are administered the COGAT, which is a universal screening for IQ. There's a cut score based on that. If a student scores a certain range on the COGAT, they then move on to a second level of screening, where they move to the school counselor and they get further assessments that are done. Based on those screenings, depending on where the student scores, if they meet an additional cutoff score, along with teacher feedback and review of permanent product and portfolio work, the student would then move on to the school psychologist, who would then do more formal assessments that take much longer, approximately an hour or so, or maybe even more. And they would then participate in the full multidisciplinary evaluation for giftedness. And that's how your students end up getting identified as gifted. Generally, it's students that are scoring in the top 98th percentile. 2% of the population is generally considered gifted. And then having high scores and meeting the multiple criteria for giftedness, which means being interested in various areas, having leadership qualities. These are all different areas that we talk about as well. And so that's how you get identified as gifted here. Now, I came from a district previously that didn't have that universal screening tool, and I think it is so powerful that we do that here, because it really captures students that teachers might not realize could be gifted, because maybe they're quiet or maybe they're not necessarily performing up to their ability, because they're not being challenged, so they just don't necessarily care. So I love that this district does that, and that is somewhat unique.
Thank you.
You had a second question.
I think, well, I just was curious as to how those that don't identify as gifted at that, with the screener, how they would potentially benefit from differentiation with more rigor if they are testing at advanced. I guess really it would be more in
Right.
4th and 5th grade.
So there's many students that are gifted, right, and they achieve very well. There's also students that are quite bright, right, and just because you're not gifted doesn't mean that you're not smart. You can be quite bright and not quite meet that 98th percentile. But these students are high achievers, and maybe they make up a little bit for where their IQ wasn't necessarily, because they're super hard workers, right? And they can still get it, and they rise to the level of their peers. So I think that that's where this kind of cluster together could be quite powerful for those students. And again, I just think it's a good grouping.
I appreciate the additional context for the record and for the community, and those around the table that don't have as much experience in the conversations about that. I think that giftedness is obviously, it's a label. You test into it, of course, but it is a label, but it doesn't necessarily speak to every type of child. And so I just wanted to make sure that the overarching theme of this portion of the agenda is that we are meeting all students where they are and providing them the rigor that they need to be successful at the highest level possible. That's my takeaway with that. Elementary. Okay. Middle school. So in this area here, my biggest concern is with the elimination or the attrition, I guess, of one of the middle school gifted positions. The position that you had on the high school slide, to me, not that high school giftedness or oversight needs to happen. I think by the time that students get to high school, there is a natural reality for students to differentiate and take content that is equivalent to their need. At the middle level, I think there is less of that. I understand the slow start for the honors class. I appreciated the advocacy of the teachers for the development of the programming with fidelity for the honors class. My concern is that with the push-in model, although I'm not against the idea of what that looks like, I really think the middle level is what suffers the most about the differentiation across all subject areas with PD for teachers. So what I would envision, and I've discussed this with Dr. Russell briefly, is that middle level role could do, in my mind, more of what you have on the high school slide. So I wanted to know your thoughts about oversight between two buildings. That's my other concern, is that continuity. If there's one person pushing in across two buildings as opposed to oversight, I think that's could potentially be problematic.
So are you asking, would the person serving in the high school role also be able to?
I guess I'm questioning the need for the high school role.
So the feedback from the high school that we received from our program feedback was that there was a lack of continuity of services, a lack of collaboration, and it was a lot of isolation. Things were happening in isolation. And that there really needed to be this kind of overall way to bring it together. And so the recommendation specifically had come from the program review, that we really needed to come up with a way to have a person serve as a way to kind of wrap this together and help to provide some of that differentiation and coordinated efforts to help kind of strengthen that program and bring it together, because it was becoming very piecemeal, I guess, that it was becoming more isolated than I think how they originally had envisioned it.
Okay. And so I don't, if that's the feedback that was received, I don't necessarily, I don't dispute that. I guess to me, what that would signal is that that should be important at the middle level as well, that same sort of person.
So the feedback from the middle level wasn't necessarily that it wasn't a coordinated effort. It was more so in like strengthening the programming that we were providing them. So it was less about not being coordinated and more so about making sure that they were being provided, you know, the extension opportunities, and that we're revamping some of our opportunities that we're providing them, that some of the things were a little bit more redundant and maybe not as timely, but less about coordination.
Right. But I guess maybe, I can see how that maybe would be the feedback for the way that the program sits currently. I just don't understand how that would be the reality for the programming going forward with one less teacher. Because now you have one person for two buildings, and I would argue that probably the experience is not the same between the two buildings to begin with, and that this level of coordination is not embedded into the classroom in the same way that it will be with a leveled ELA class and a leveled math class. So I think that this type of role will be critical for the success of the implementation of, that's just my view.
At the middle school role.
At the middle school level.
At the middle school level. So I think at the middle school, being able to kind of cluster the students was part of trying to be able to improve some of that programming.
But there's nobody at the helm of that effort. CNI is at the helm of the effort for curriculum. I'm sorry, Dr.
Well,
Russell, go ahead.
Dr. Champagne-Lee will be returning next year and will be
So-
providing gifted support.
Sometimes I ask questions if I already kind of know the answers, just because I need you to say it for everybody. Yeah, I need everybody to hear the same thing that I already know. So that's, if we could talk about that for a little bit, just about the way that administration and curriculum instruction envisions how gifted programming will change at the middle level with the attrition of one role and a shared person. Because I don't have a middle level gifted child, but if I did, I'd have some pretty significant concerns. But I'd also would be very excited that it's not just a pull-out enrichment, that it's actually going to be embedded in their curriculum. But I need to know how that's going to happen.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that is, you know, when we originally envisioned the high school gifted coordinator role, we were thinking that there may be a teacher that had some time in their schedule that was, you know, otherwise not utilized that could really do that. We're still not 100% sure based on high school staffing and where that will all fall out, if that will be something that a high school teacher is able to take, or if that will be the supervisor of equity and student services when she returns full-time next year. I think at the middle level, you know, what we see is we do want to build capacity in the teachers. We foresee the push in really building that capacity for teachers to differentiate themselves and working as you know, hand in glove with that teacher to support the differentiation for those highest achievers that are grouped in those courses. The supervisor of equity and student services is really going to be crucial in coordinating that. I see where your point is. When we have one at each building, they can coordinate with each other and make sure they're a little bit more on, you know, on the same page. At the high school, obviously it's larger, there are more hands in the pot, so that coordinator is a little bit more.
Well, and there's specialized
correct.
high-level content
Correct.
areas, right? There's AP classes, there's honors
Correct.
classes already.
At the middle level, you know.
And I just think in terms of the delivery model at the middle level, because of the full inclusion model that is currently in place there, I have some significant concerns. How did that happen? I have some significant concerns about how teachers will feel supported and actually able to. Clustering makes sense initially as a soft start, but I just have some significant concerns about confidence in delivery when that's not the practice today and we're removing a person without cohesive oversight for both buildings. And I'm not saying that Dr. Champagne-Lee can't do that, but she's in charge of the programming for the district.
And I see Mrs. Rinko over there as well, as far as from a strictly curriculum standpoint and supporting that process as well. Do you have thoughts?
Well, just thinking about support for teachers, one plan that we're thinking about for next year is contracting with a specialist from the IU to provide some professional learning for our middle school ELA teachers in appropriate means to differentiate for not just gifted learners, but high achieving learners, and both, because they're actually different buckets of instructional strategies that you would use.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's sort of what I was getting at. There just needs to be a push-in schedule between two buildings with one person. I'm the most concerned about the push-in schedule piece of things, honestly. And I don't know if anybody else shares that opinion. I know that it's 10 o'clock, guys, I'm sorry. The vote was fast, so it's okay. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts about the matter. I was embedded in the process of middle school, and now we're in the high school, so I just.
So two questions. Are you asking for a new position? Is this a new position? Okay, so you're just going to kind of, and then the one teacher who brought up that by having one gifted teacher between the two middle schools puts them over what they're supposed to have. So what is that number going to be?
So
How much over?
Chapter 16 regs, the caseload is 65 max per teacher, with a maximum of 20 gifted students in one class. So roster to one class, if you were to hold like a gifted specialized class, there could be 20 students, but any gifted case manager could case manage up to 65 students.
And how many?
I don't know the numbers offhand. I'd have to look.
Okay. But she believes it's going to be over.
That's what she said, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
I do feel like gifted learners are self-directed. So by the time you get into high school, they're pretty self-directed. They don't need a lot of support.
I would argue that that's not always the case. I don't know. We have a couple teachers still hanging out. I would say that some gifted learners are twice exceptional in other areas, and so therefore they need additional differentiation for how they receive content. Just because you're gifted doesn't mean that, it's not the same as the 90s gifted, I don't think, anymore. Where that's the only identification that there is. The other piece that I would just like to offer is that if the individual, say, I don't know what the numbers are for gifted caseload between both middle schools, but then that one person would then carry that caseload up to 65, but then also be expected to run those GIEP meetings, write those GIEPs, and then also push into both buildings. I just don't, I have an issue with the structure of it.
But we don't even know what the number is, right? We don't even know if she's over 65.
I'm pretty sure the number combined is over 65. However, we do have a system in place at the high school where those GIEPs are dispersed, and they are handled by individuals who work directly with students in classes. So right now, that is part of the vision. The second year into this model, under the oversight with Dr. Champagne-Lee and the gifted individual, whoever ends up in that role, there may be opportunities there, again, based on what happens with enrollments and what the need is for some of the teachers we have in kindergarten, for example. So there are possibilities that could open up, but I think between the curriculum and instruction department, along with an individual who seeks the position, we'd like to post it so we get somebody who really wants to do that. We don't just want to put somebody in the role. And leadership with Dr. Champagne-Lee. We also have coaches on staff that we believe together can get this off the ground and support the effort to have teachers working together on high achieving and supporting high achieving students, as opposed to right now the model that we have with pairs of teachers working together is to support our struggling students.
So, and I appreciate that, Dr. Russell. And so that's kind of what I was getting at by way of reassurance and discussion, because although this seems, the plan is well laid out, but what I was hearing, and I was grateful that, we had advocacy, excitement for the potential of it, But advocacy for, we need to make sure we do it correctly. No one's going to tell you you're doing your job wrong faster than a gifted student. But the fact of the matter is that those are the types of reassurances that I think the families that are already in the programming deserve to hear, as well as the teachers that are needing to deliver the instruction. So there's just a lot of questions, and normally we have much more robust conversation in a specialized meeting about gifted, and I understand the reasons that it was rolled into Education Committee, but those are the things that have sort of been in a holding pattern, for 5 years running. So I'm excited to see the opportunity of it move forward, but there's just still a lot of question marks around the logistics of it. So I don't know if you have any other deeper thoughts to offer based on some of the feedback that we heard about it.
So I think our teachers are a little nervous too. However, the clustering model, the intentional clustering model, should make differentiation within the classroom easier. Because it's not then, it's a little bit more intentional as opposed to, I want to say, students being separated or so dispersed that it makes it challenging for the classroom teacher to really address the needs of all students. So we're really thinking about narrowing the range. We use the clustering model. We employ that at the elementary level, where there are those small groups. So that, in combination with a teacher who's dedicated, right now our gifted teachers don't really have a lot of face time with their students. They have that one pull-out. So we would like to actually start to increase that by having them collaborate with classroom teachers on the experiences of our highest achievers, and then support during I&E. So again, it's a gradual start under the leadership of Dr. Champagne-Lee that could lead to a request or a reallocation of a resource the following year to have one in both schools. So I don't know if I went into it any deeper that added to what I had already said, but that's the vision right now, and I believe it's a path towards more effectively supporting our highest achieving students. Like you said, we've waited a long time for this. There have been 3 reviews now with 3 different leaderships or organizations, and just because of circumstances, individuals departing the district or taking a leave, it's been difficult to get this plan implemented and moving forward. We're there.
And no question, it is absolutely a step forward.
Yeah.
I guess those are the lingering thoughts for me, and hearing you provide reassurance, I think probably, hopefully, especially at this middle level. I think if there wasn't the attrition, I would have, I understand all of the reasoning. I get that. We have 2 buildings, and there's not one that's more important than the other. So it's the oversight and the continuity between the middle level experience. So by the time they get to the high school and they're all in one location, there can be, as you mentioned, Dr. Moulton, more robust guidance and pathway. And not just for gifted. To me, it's not just about gifted. And I've been saying this year over year, it's about those that are testing consistently at advanced.
Yeah. So the only comment I would add, something you just shared resonated, is that having one person lead this work to start will bring consistency, because they're going to approach it, at both buildings in the same way, in conjunction with leadership from Dr. Champagne-Lee.
Mr. McGuire.
The one thing that the cluster model made me think about is sort of a population question and a programmatic question. What is the delta between gifted and high achieving or advanced? And then the implication is, as you kind of mentioned, Ms. White, kind of the more nuanced conception of gifted, which is the implication of this is that there are gifted non-high achieving students. Otherwise, the Venn diagram would be a circle. Right, so there's a population of high achievers that are not gifted. There's a population of gifted students that are not high achievers. Clustering implicates that there's a joining of those, and I'm curious about, 1, what is the delta, and then 2, what are the ramifications to the populations that implicates?
The idea is that they end up, supporting each other, right? So your students that are gifted but aren't necessarily achieving as well, now they're in a group of class where there's more students that are high achievers, right? And are kind of helping to inspire them to work maybe a little bit harder. And then on the flip side, for your students that are high achievers that aren't necessarily gifted, they're rising to the level of their peers, and they can rise, right? Because they can work hard, they can achieve that, they can work up with their peers. So they get that level of stimulation that they needed with it still being a little bit of a challenge. So it kind of feels right for them. So that's the idea behind this. I've been doing gifted evaluations for 20 years. I'm a former school psychologist. And so the most heartbreaking conversation you have to have with a parent, I find, is when you have to tell them your child's not gifted, but it's like your child is so bright. Like there's such a small difference between students that are really bright and are high achievers and then students that actually hit that 98th percentile. Like they really can be clustered together and they can work together to support each other.
I guess my question is, what is the literal delta? Like, is it
So
is it
there are
statistically
numbers,
meaningful or not?
in previous meetings, we've definitely gone over numbers. He's looking for actual,
I don't
there's
know.
like 100 and something proficient.
Like, is it 3 or is it 40? Like, is it
I
statistically
think it's
meaningful
probably
or not?
somewhere between that number. Right? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know the
the
actual,
answer
I'm
to
just more
break down.
curious about the qualitative, like,
Right.
is it 2 kids or is it like a lot of, it's like, because that's a very different, the implications for the program are much larger if the population is significant.
So are you thinking how many students would be included in a cluster?
Yeah, well, like, are we pulling in like 5 advanced kids or are we pulling in 40 advanced kids?
Well, there's multiple sections. I think,
there's gonna be
and that's going to be
yeah.
different per building because the cohorts are different.
Okay.
The numbers are different
So
per
we're not
building.
going to have just one class that's all gifted and high achievers. So it's not going to be a class of 30. It's going to be smaller clusters of like 7, 8 kids within different clusters of classrooms.
Okay.
And to the previous point that was given, 80% are students that are still valuable and learning at multiple levels. Everybody's just mixed in one pool now. So to me, it would provide benefit to that section of students as well, because there would be more targeted learning at that standard pathway. That's how I would view it. I don't know if everybody else feels that way, but that's my vision of the concept of clustering, and then ultimately an honors English class.
I think I'm a little confused because, so the gifted students at the middle level, they're just pulled out for, the periods of time a few times a cycle. So essentially, classes are currently mixed. So I don't think I'm getting the clustering, because the gifted students and high achieving students and the 80% students are already mixed. So what's the defining factor?
So instead of the range being this, the range is going to be more like this. Okay, so we're going to kind of, the students that struggle more and need more support, those aren't necessarily going to be in that cluster class. So we're going to bring the range here so it's not there.
Is that, I'm sorry, excuse me, can I ask a question? Clustering, is it another word for tracking, what we used to use
No.
many years ago? Because it sounds like you're not going to be having a mix in a class anymore. You're going to have fewer of a mix and
Yeah.
more concentrated of the higher level.
So tracking only had the high level.
Right.
We're still going to have the other
Some
level, but
mixed
we're not
in.
necessarily going to have
The
the
lower
lowest of levels.
learners,
Yeah,
which is
we're
also a challenge when you have, that was always my concern.
Right, because we would
You have all of those people in one class, how does one teacher really?
Tracking was specifically only your high achievers.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of clarify, we're not going to have a whole class of just high
Gotcha.
achieving students.
Okay.
Are there additional questions from the table?
Just one quick comment about at the elementary level using computer-based programs, supplemental resources. My child's experience with gifted at the elementary level was that was a place where she went and used her hands and built things. And I think I don't know that they want more computer resources, especially like this section of students.
When I spoke with the elementary gifted teachers, they were thinking about it more for that time that they have in class to kind of do some exploratory. So, because we're talking about trying to like differentiate and how can we bring gifted education to other subject areas. So being able to have access to those types of programs, maybe within that general ed class, wasn't necessarily part of the gifted class. But our gifted program already had great feedback in elementary. So they don't want to give up that hands-on activities. In fact, they wanted more resources for it, right? Like we want to do more of that. So no, it wasn't to replace that, it was to add.
Okay, seeing no other questions. Thank you, Dr. Moulton.
Good evening. We have a need.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So in consultation with the solicitor, the action we took tonight on that, the untabling of that motion, whatever, needs to go through a different process. So we need to remove the motion from the table. Call upon over to remove the motion from the table. This requires a motion and a second, and then. And then after we do that, then we have to go back to the original motion.
Okay.
So point of order. And I make a motion to untable the motion from the previous motion. Item.
Mr. McKinney has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McGuire seconds. Is there any comment or question? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. So our motion undid it just now. We all voted to undo it, and now they're going to read what she said to do, and that's what we're going to do.
Yes, so we request to approve the adjustments to the middle school special area programming effective for the 26-27 school year. And I so moved.
Mr. McKinney motions. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McGuire seconds. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, so now we've unanimously voted to move it forward. So for the nays, we can do a roll call. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know if we want
Go
to just
ahead.
keep it the
No,
same that we had
Yeah, we'll
for
just
the
do it
record.
exactly the
Yeah.
same way. Yep. Mrs. Lofton.
Yes.
Ms. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Dr. Weston.
Yes.
Mr. McKinney.
Yes.
Ms. Bridey.
No.
Mr. Liggett.
No.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Ms. White. 6 yes, 3 no, and the motion carries.
Okay. We have a need to update our AP literature resource. So a resource review committee. We reviewed 4 different resources, and shown on the screen are our recommended resources for purchase for next school year. The first resource on the left is comprised of the literature selections for AP Lit. And the resource on the right addresses more of the writing, grammar, and skills for the course. So we're recommending to purchase both of those resources for implementation next year.
I have just a quick question, and it's really just more if you could clarify. So AP Language.
Yes.
That resource is fine.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with this at all. It's a separate class.
Correct.
Okay. It's a prerequisite to this or a separate class?
It's a separate class.
Altogether?
Yeah.
And this class, that literature and composition textbook, does that take the place and have inside it all individual books?
Not necessarily individual books. There are literature selections. Some of them are short stories, poems, not necessarily like novel length.
Understood.
This course also uses novels.
That's what I'm getting
But
at.
we're not recommending purchase of any new ones. We're not recommending a change.
Okay.
Our AP literature textbook is out of compliance, so we need a new textbook.
That was the clarification I was looking for the record. Excellent. So this is a supplement to the class. It is the textbook for this course. But
Yes.
it doesn't replace or eliminate any of the novels that are part of the curriculum within this class
That is
currently.
correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions about that? Or are we okay to move that forward to the formal board approval? Okay, let's move that forward then.
This slide is just a review. You saw it last month when I presented to the Education Committee of the Whole. It is a review of the work that was done with the Elementary ELA Resource Review Committee that leads to the recommendations that are on the following slides. So we are not recommending to renew our contract with HMH and our resource into literature for multiple reasons. Most of them are listed on the slide, as you can see. 74% of our staff indicated at the start of this process that they were looking for a different resource. When Into Literature was implemented, it was during the pandemic. So on the graph to the right, you can see our PSSA scores over time. In 2019, we were using a different resource. And then in 2020, we implemented Into Reading, and oftentimes there's an implementation dip in the first year of implementation. In addition, this was during the pandemic where we saw universally scores decline. However, with the continued implementation of Into Reading, our scores have stayed flat and have plateaued. So we are looking for a resource that is aligned to the science of reading and structured literacy practices. Our recommended resources for piloting are Great Minds Arts and Letters and Amplify's CKLA as core pilot resources, as well as a pilot of the newly released Level 4 and 5 foundations. The visual of Scarborough's Rope helps us see where these different resources kind of support ELA. The Scarborough's Rope visual helps to show what are the skills that students need to become a skilled reader. And it's divided into two parts, what we call the upper strands or language comprehension and the lower strands or word recognition. And Arts and Letters is intentionally designed to only support language comprehension, and it is designed to be paired with a foundational skills program that addresses word recognition, such as foundations. So Arts and Letters would be piloted alongside implementation of our K-3 foundations that's already in place, as well as the pilot of Level 4 and 5 foundations. CKLA has two different resources, one they call knowledge and one they call skills. So that pilot would address, both of the components of Scarborough's Rope in grades in grades 4 and 5. The pilot plan, the duration would be, we'd start in the beginning of the school year and do a comparative pilot of Arts and Letters and CKLA. We would do that comparative pilot for just one module, which depending on the grade level would be 6 to 8 weeks. At that point, we would think about which resource we would want to make a recommendation for purchase. The support that teachers will receive will include training from the vendor as well as our in-house support. Our evaluation of the pilot would depend on classroom observations, of course, teacher feedback, student engagement, and student assessment data. And then again, at the conclusion of the pilot, we would make a recommendation for purchase so that the teachers who are piloting the resource we're hoping to then implement could continue that implementation for the remainder of the school year with full implementation the following year. This shows a scope and cost of what that pilot would entail. Teacher representatives we would have from all 4 of the elementary buildings, as well as teachers from K to 5, and the cost is listed here. So we are asking for approval for the pilot as well as the purchase of the pilot materials so that teachers could have those materials in their hands before the summer.
Are there any comments or questions from the table?
I have a question. Going back to the why a different resource slide.
Yes.
So there was a transition to into reading in 2019. Is that
2020.
2020. And so presumably that was well informed and et cetera, that decision. And this is a reflection of lowered performance, preference by staff, et cetera. Were there any benefits from the prior? Like we transitioned to into reading, were there benefits? Because now clearly there's an inflection point. We want to do something different. But we've taken 5 years to reevaluate this. So obviously there's more there, right? So we transitioned to this, now we're transitioning away. Can you give a little context beyond just the negative?
Do you mean, is there any benefit in exploring the resource that we were using prior to interreading?
Either that, or was there benefits in transitioning to interreading that potentially we will lose? Right, so it's a pilot, so you're seeking benefits. We've been with this program for 5 years. Presumably there were benefits over the prior curriculum. You know, like, so contextually within the longer term view, why did we move to interreading? Are we seeing any benefits from our interreading, or is this kind of a holistic buyer's remorse on interreading to position into a new curriculum, which presumably injects the same sort of risks as when we moved to interreading, right?
Yes, yeah. Okay, so the resource that we had used prior to interreading, we did evaluate that during this review. It is not aligned to what we know about science of reading and structured literacy practices, which is like a body of research that is not new, but it's new to education in that we're becoming more aware of it. So we know now, what students need to become skilled readers. And Into Reading's resource does not align with what we know students need. So there are those negatives. There are some positives, as you mentioned. They do a good job with vocabulary. The texts are very engaging and diverse. So we want to keep those things that and we do see those things in the resources that we're hoping to pilot.
So then in terms of the pilot, will you have defined achievement goals that you put before the board in terms of the pilot, in terms of either parity, like back to 0, or improvement, +10, right? Because we're at -10. In terms of achievement, obviously, is there kind of quantitative alignment to the science of reading that you could, I assume there's qualitative alignment, but I'm just curious, how does the board measure success of the pilot through your presentation?
Yeah, so we can't really use PSSA scores to measure the success because we wouldn't have them until the following summer. But there are other student achievement measures that we can look at, such as DIPL scores or local assessments, some of our benchmarks that we use. So we can present that to the board once we have that information from the pilot, as well as classroom observations. I'm hoping to have the principals on board with that, as well as our instructional coach and myself. We'll share the results of the classroom observations. We'll have a standardized form when we go in to observe, thinking about obvious student learning and student engagement and other measures of success of the pilot.
And then what is sort of the go, no go around the pilot? Because plan B is to stay with Into Reading, presumably. It's not to, or unless it's to pilot a different curriculum?
We did a pretty comprehensive review of what's out there for elementary curriculum. We reviewed 10 resources. So I don't know that it would be a back to the drawing board. So we would be making a comparison to what we're implementing now. Yeah.
Those were really good questions, Mr. McGuire. This is the first curriculum cycle with a pilot and review for a lot of our board members. So I think the context is really helpful in understanding how curriculum materials are selected, the selection of the pilot materials, there's a review prior. So I think spelling that out is really helpful. I think it puts it into context. Could you also just, for the purpose of that train of thought, explain about I'm so sorry, I'm fading fast, as you can all see. Can you explain about the payoff to improvement of scores overall and how long that takes when you implement a new resource?
I mean, the typical trend for implementation of a new resource is that we see an implementation dip. In the first year of implementation of any new resource, we often see a decline in scores. And so then after that first year, when teachers are more comfortable with the material and the resource, then we start to see the payoff in the second year.
So between about 3 years, I would say, so that there's actual payoff and measurable outcome year over year, so that we could actually track it. Like this was like, to your point, Mr. McGuire, 5 years worth of data, but there were some other factors that were coexisting within the implementation of this particular resource. I just wanted to provide context.
Can I ask a question? Are our special ed students' PSA scores in this as well?
Yes.
So with our percentage of special ed going up and our enrollment going down, could it be that this is as good as we're going to get? It's just a thought. I mean, I just, how can it not dilute our PSSA scores? I'm all for trying a new resource, but I also don't want y'all.
I would just think for the 30% of our students who aren't achieving proficiency or advanced on our PSSAs, that we continue to explore other ways that they can achieve that proficiency, which might include, our MTSS model, so not just our Tier 1 core instruction, but we're also revamping and taking a look at our reading MTSS and our interventions to support those students. So that's all part of the comprehensive picture of what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I also have a question about the science of reading, and I know that this has been, within the past few years, really a revolution in literacy education. So I know we were talking about science of reading earlier in one of the prior education committee meetings. When we make this shift, will all of our ELA education be shifted over to science of reading, or are we still doing anything that's based in the former methodologies?
No, we've made a complete shift to structured literacy practices and responding to what the research and evidence shows.
Okay, so this is sort of that last piece of that move over to other methods that have been proven to work better.
Correct.
Okay.
These were really good questions, and I just wanted to provide context because not everybody is as familiar with the vernacular and just the data. Ms. Westphal, so when we look at these numbers of achievements at the yearly data presentation, they're all disaggregated, so you actually can see the different variables and trends among groups as well. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 100% agree and understood. I just wanted to put context around that as well. That was a very good point. Are there any other comments or questions with regarding to moving the pilot forward? Okay, so then we'll see that on May's agenda as well.
Thank you.
That's
What's the
end
next
of
slide? You're not going to put up the thank you?
2.0.
Come on.
I can go back to, okay, hold on. Wrong way.
Payoff. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Sincerely, that was an old-style meeting. We are at 10:35. Does anyone have anything to add for the good of the group?
Dr. Nicholson, I confused you with Mr. Weaver for a minute there, from the old-fashioned finance committee of the whole meetings. Sincerely.
You did a nice job on that presentation, Dr. Nicholson.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, administration, for sticking with us to the end of the meeting. Very much appreciated. And we will see everyone, when are we seeing everybody? Next week, we have safety and operations, correct? Fabulous. Have a great night, everybody. Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Judy. I'm all, closing items, committee meeting notes. For the record, notes will be posted following the meeting. There's a new protocol will absolutely be posted after that protocol is followed. 3.02, notice of videos disclaimer. 3.03, adjournment. Have a wonderful night.